What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the official Loft Sports podcast. I'm your host, Brian Finnegan, joined by Tom Schultz for our Friday rendition of the podcast. Tom, how's it going?
Doing well, man. We've seen some moving pieces in the NFL. Lots of rumors swirling around about players and trades. Rashawn Gary's out here posting goodbye messages and then deleting them because he may not be leaving. It just feels like this could be a fun offseason in the NFL.
Yeah, it's pretty odd post. What did he put that on X or Instagram or
I
something?
think he
Or
posted it on his Instagram, and he's a guy that I was like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind him in Dallas. Like, cool, another pass rush option." And then Adam Schefter's like, "Oh yeah, that post he made, he deleted it." So
yeah,
I know the sorry, yeah,
I'll go. No, I was about to say. So when we get into the Packers, I know we'll talk about him. I think he
yeah.
he is one of those guys with a really
Yep.
high cap number.
Yep, he is.
Yeah, but so folks, right, tonight we're going to finish up our free agency preview. So we have 12 teams to talk about. So buckle up, and we're going to be here for a while. But hey, we are recording this on a Friday night. So for some of you, maybe you're listening to this Friday night, or you're going to be listening to this Saturday. Sit back, relax, crack open a cold one, and listen to your boys talk some football, and we'll get you all prepared for, and tell you exactly what your favorite football team needs to do, to get better this season. So, for those of you watching on YouTube or our website, the spin wheel is back. Honestly, Tom, I think the big question of the night is how many times am I going to predict the exact team that comes out on the spin wheel? Like I did,
What?
3 times
Yeah,
last
I was gonna
week?
say, what were you Friday? You were like 3 for whatever you called it. That was
Yeah,
impressive. If you
bro,
keep it up,
absolutely
I'm serious.
wild.
We're going maybe not Vegas. We can drive to upstate New York, where I can meet you halfway somewhere where we got a casino and we gotta might be taking some numbers from you.
Yeah, man. I can't believe how crazy that was. But so without further ado, we got a long show ahead of us. So let's get going. So we got all 12 teams that we're going to speak about here on on the wheel. If I can just move my mouse over. Here we go. All right. So here we go. I got to predict the first one, right? I got to get it going here. Let's go with, man, we're going to go with the Chicago Bears here. How's that sound? Oh, I was wrong. Oh,
You
God.
were close.
All right. The New England Patriots are runner-ups in the Super Bowl here. As soon as I get to my Patriot notes. I was going to be honest, AFC East teams, how it is being a Jets fan. You think I want to talk about these teams? Patriot notes. Here we go. So the New England Patriots, one of the best turnaround stories of the season, right? So Patriot season, right? One for the record books. They went from from worst to first, going from 3-14 to 14-3, right? First year head coach Mike Vrabel, breakout star quarterback Drake May. The Patriots reclaimed the AFC East for the first time since 2019, and advanced all the way to the Super Bowl before succumbing to a terrific Seattle defense. So Patriots got off to actually a little bit of a shaky start. They started off 1-2, and then that's when they went on their dominant run, going 13-1 the rest of the season, including 9-0 on the road. They did not. They did only face a strength of schedule of 391 this season, right? But hey, that's what happens when you're a last place team the year before. You're going to have a lesser schedule compared to a lot of other teams that finished higher than you prior. So the offense was led by Drake May. They averaged 28 points per game, which was second in the NFL as he threw for over 4,000 yards with 31 touchdowns. It helped he had Stephon Diggs, who had 85 catches for just over 1,000 yards. But really, their ground game was really good, and that really carried them for parts of the season. They had Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, the rookie. They combined for 1,500 yards rushing together, and May added in 450 yards himself. Offensively, they were very stout against the run, finished fourth in the league in points allowed. The run defense was sixth in the league. They were eighth in yards per game allowed and finished 10th in takeaways with a +3 turnover margin. Christian Barmore finished with 8.5 sacks and 49 pressures. Christian Gonzalez led a secondary that ranked eighth in passing yards allowed, while included Jalen Hawkins, who led the team with 4 interceptions. Robert Spillane led the team in tackles with 97, and he had an interception. Vrabel wins Coach of the Year, his first year in New England. Offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels wins Assistant Coach of the Year. And May was named second team All Pro and really just missed out on winning the MVP by a few points, losing out to Matthew Stafford. So that was a recap. Let's talk about their free agents. So, unlike last season, they had close to about $100 million in cap space, and they spent a lot of money last year, right? Bringing in veteran players. So, this year, they're projected, at least at this time, I don't know if this is, up to date numbers, but they're projected to have around 40 million this offseason with some of the moves that have been made recently. One, there was a very notable move that happened the other day, which I'll get into. So we should really keep an eye on what they plan to do here with Christian Gonzalez, as he's going to be probably looking for a new contract over the summer. We just saw earlier this week, Trent McDuffie, he just got moved to the Rams from the Chiefs. The Chiefs couldn't afford to pay him. Does New England do something similar with Christian Gonzalez? I don't know. Most likely, I would say no, as they don't have so much money committed to a quarterback, but they could possibly look to move him if they feel that they don't want to end up paying top dollars to a cornerback. So, right, the big move that happened the other day, Stephon Diggs, he's going to be released officially at the start of the league year. He's coming off his second one-and-done season, right? He was in Houston the year before, and now in New England. He got released both times. So he's proven to be a guy who seems like really wears out his welcome pretty quickly. He's 32 years old now, still a solid player, though he did have a very quiet postseason. Personally, I think he's out of his prime. Plus, he's embroiled in some legal issues you might be aware of right now. So, my prediction is he's probably going to take some time before signing with the team, not just for him, but for any team that might be interested in signing him. They're probably going to want to hold off until maybe those legal issues or have some sort of resolution. Some of the other guys, though, that they have for free agency. So Kayvon Chason, their edge rusher, he recorded 7.5 sacks this season. He's expected to command a significant raise on the market. Potentially, numbers could be in like the $10 to $12 million range. I don't know if New England's going to be willing to pay him that much money. Jalen Hawkins, who led the team in interceptions, he's expected to be a high priority signing. So New England can keep that continuity on the back end of the defense. Austin Hooper, very much the backup tight end to Hunter Henry, but the team this season used a lot of fewer tight end sets, so I would probably expect him to be gone from that roster. And then also here on the defensive line, Kyrus Tonga, who's a defensive tackle. He played nose tackle for the defense and was given a lot of credit as being instrumental to the Patriots' run defense being as good as it was. So I think the Patriots will probably try to lock him up maybe with another year or two on the contract. So let's get into coaching now, right? So Mike Vrabel, coaching philosophy. So Vrabel's defenses utilize a mix of the 3-4 and the 4-3 alignments to confuse offensive lines. So last season, he used a lot of fronts in which linebackers walked up to the gaps to threaten the blitz in order to make the quarterbacks guess which players were actually blitzing. Again, we've talked a lot on this free agency preview about simulated blitzes. The defense is another one that likes to use a lot of simulated pressures, bringing multiple players to the lines of scrimmage. Though the Patriots did have a blitz rate that ranked 12th in the league. So, right, they didn't blitz that often this year, and their coverage leaned heavily into cover 1, so as in man-to-man, and cover 5, which is 2-man, which shows that, right, Vrabel really trusted his corners, a la Christian Gonzalez, to win their individual matchups. That's defensively. Let's talk about their offensive philosophy a little bit, right? So Josh McDaniels, he comes back here to New England, and he basically really evolved his offensive philosophy to accommodate Drake May this year, right? Historically, McDaniels, was known as a guy who's used a gap running scheme. But this past season, he implemented a lot of outside zone concepts. He did this to give May opportunities to utilize, bootleg concepts. And as we saw, May was very effective on making throws on the move. So this change to a zone run scheme also created better opportunities for play action passing, which created easy catch and run opportunities for receivers. We even saw at times, right, the Patriots run RPOs in power read concepts, right? So power read is in the quarterback reads an unblocked edge rusher or an unblocked edge defender, and he decides whether he wants to hand it off or take off and run. So the defenses really needed to account for May as a runner, right? So long gone are the days of the statuesque quarterback that, right, McDaniels had for so many years. I'm not going to name that guy's name. We know who he is. So let's get into some free agency fits here. Who who could New England be looking to add to the mix here? We all saw how, especially in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs, how they did have that weakness on the left side of the offensive line. They were starting the two rookies at left tackle. You had Will Campbell. At left guard, you had Jared Davis. So one free agent fit who I have in here is Isaac Samalo, who's a guard for the Steelers. He's a veteran guard. He excels in an outside zone run scheme. It would be a massive upgrade to the interior of the Patriots offensive line, as we saw how much the line struggled in the playoffs to protect May. Sumalo, though, is a guy who's kind of injury prone the past few years. He's a little older, but he would be a good short-term upgrade over Jared Wilson. Then you can kind of keep Wilson kind of just as depth at that point. On the edge, if Chason walks, one replacement that they could possibly look into is a guy like AJ Epinesa from Buffalo. He's kind of a heavier edge at 6'6", 260 pounds, but he can set the edge against the run, and he would be possibly a cheaper alternative to Chason. Some other stuff I want to get into the Patriots here, as there's already reports that they're very involved in the trade markets already, right? There's been rumors that they've checked in on AJ Brown, and they really need a number one receiver for Drake May, right? We just saw that they released Stephon Diggs. So, that receiver room is pretty barren right now at this point. They could use some more, not just a receiver, they could use some more pass rush help as well. So while May is on the rookie contract, this is a chance this season for New England to really go all in here. You have A.J. Brown, who I've mentioned in the past on past shows. Brandon Ayuk is out there, could possibly be had. Max Crosby could potentially be out there and had for the right price, right? The Brown contract could be tough to fit. I won't get into that here because Tom's going to get into that with the Eagles. The Crosby contract, though, as I spoke about last week with the Raiders, very much more manageable. I'm not saying they're going to possibly get both of them, as I feel like that could be too unrealistic, but I really believe at this point, the Patriots are going to make a big splash trade this offseason, and I think pick number 31 is going to be, the major playing chip here as part of the draft of what they could bargain to improve the roster. So you've got Drake May, like I said, on his rookie contract. This is your chance. If you're the Patriots, you have a chance here to get back to the Super Bowl with a big time move. That's my story on the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you just said kind of checks with what I'm thinking as well. I mean, I Chason, that's going to be a big question with him. Harold Landry's been kind of banged up a little bit as well, off and on. I know they're happy with the both of them. They're both 7.5, 8.5 sacks, I think. The two of them. I like to think they're going to look for an edge guy regardless of what happens with Chason. They need to get a little bit younger there. Andrew's 29, turning 30. So, yeah, I definitely look at edge as a position. And then it's really offensive side of the football for me, right? The offensive line, which was pretty good during the regular season, but you touched on they didn't play the toughest schedule. And, yeah, again, you got to play what's in front of you, and the Pats did it, and they did it well. They gave up 21 sacks in the playoffs. That is a lot of sacks to give up over 4 or 5 games for this football team. So they need to get better on the offensive line, especially having Drake May and, a quarterback that they feel is their future. So I think the offensive line is where they need to look at a little bit, especially on the interior. And then wide receiver, I think this team needs a true number one. I think they were in the wide receiver market regardless of Stephon Diggs. And you touched on it. I think this was more the legal side of it versus his play. It seemed like everybody was happy with what he brought to the football team this year. I would have said before they released Diggs, they still need a wide receiver. Now they definitely need one. They signed Matt Collins a year ago, and I think they were happy with what he brought. He had a pretty good first year for them. I think they're comfortable with him as a number 2. This team needs to go out there and get a number 1, whether it's A.J. Brown, whether they wade into the George Pickens waters, whether they look to go get Mike Evans and see if he's still a number 1 wide receiver in today's day NFL as well. Those are guys that I think can help this offense and help the offense get better right away. Alec Pierce is a guy as well. I saw an interesting video. I wish I could say where I saw it, but I don't remember. I saw it somewhere on X that basically Alec Pierce played for Luke Fickell, and Luke Fickell is very, very tight with Mike Vrabel. They played together, I believe, in college, and they're very, very close. So Alec Pierce could be a guy, whether you view him as a number 1 wide receiver or not. I'm sure he's going to be a guy that gets paid early in this free agency period that you and I will look at and go, is he worth the money that he's getting paid? He could be a name for this team as well. Or even if it's a tight end, maybe you add an Alec Pierce and then you looked at a tight end, somebody like David Njoku or an Isaiah Likely who maybe can help contribute there as well. And then secondary, I like to see this team add another cornerback to play next to Christian Gonzalez. But there's a good blueprint there for this football team. But as you said, they have to kind of stay aggressive this offseason. They can't rest on their laurels and think this is a football team that made it to the Super Bowl. They only need one or two pieces. They were handled pretty comfortably, at least on the offensive side of the football in the Super Bowl. They need to find ways to add pieces there so that they can compete with a team like Seattle, next year if they're back there in the Super Bowl.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think they already came out, right? I think Vrabel came out and said already, like, "Oh, Will Campbell, he's our left tackle, so he's trying to throw some confidence behind him." We'll see if that actually holds up or not. Maybe they second guess and they're like, "You know what? Maybe we got to bring in a veteran left tackle in here, kick Campbell inside to play guard." That's something else that they could possibly do too. If they feel that going forward, Will Campbell's going to be just as big a liability at left tackle as he was in the playoffs.
Yeah, and listen, Will Campbell struggled in the playoffs. He had a pretty good regular season. So I know people are going to get on him, and he was one of those, are his arms long enough to be a tackle guy when the draft came out last year. So he's going to have a future on this line. I think guard definitely could be something they attempt to do with him. But yeah, they're not going to give up on him. If there's a tackle they like, they'll have no problem kicking Campbell inside. Otherwise, they'll play him at tackle next year, and then hopefully year 2 is a little bit more consistent for him.
All right, that's the Patriots. Let's go to the NFC now. Tom, let's go back to the wheel. Tom, what do you think? Give me a prediction for the wheel. Who you want to talk about?
I'd love to talk about the Bears. The Bears will be fun with everything they're doing and what they're starting to signal for next season.
The Bears. Let's see. Let's see if we get them. Oh, we got. Looks like Atlanta.
See, I don't get the Atlanta Falcons.
Atlanta Falcons.
All right. So despite finishing the year on a 4-game winning streak and actually tying for first place in the division, major changes have come in Atlanta. Both head coach Raheem Morris and general manager Terry Fontenot were fired. And they hired head coach Kevin Stefanski, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and Ian Cunningham to be their general manager. Cunningham comes from Chicago. So where are the Bears at? They are under the cap. Excuse me, we're the Falcons. They are under the cap. And let me see if I can get the number that I had right now. Where are the Falcons? Yeah, so the Falcons are under the cap, but they aren't significantly under the cap. So what can they do to create some more money between now and the start of the league year if they choose to kind of wade into the waters that are free agency? So first, extension candidates. Bijan Robinson, they're going to use the 5th-year option on him. I'm sure they are discussing an extension, which will probably bring his cap number down. But he is definitely going to be with this football team. He's been outstanding for them. And again, kind of one of those, should we take him, shouldn't we take him candidates at running back. The Falcons took him, and they've been really happy with him. I believe he had over 2,000 all-purpose yards last season, which is just a jaw-dropping number that you don't see many running backs hit anymore. Wide receiver Drake London. Drake London has been really, really consistent for this football team the last 4 years. His 5th-year option was picked up, but I'm sure the Falcons are working on an extension. London had over 900 yards in 12 games. He got injured this year, and he was well on pace to I think, set every receiving record he could have, at least, within his short career with the Falcons. So restructure candidates. They can look to restructure Chris Lindstrom, the guard, and tackle Jake Matthews, who they signed to an extension. I don't know if they've maneuvered any of these guys yet. I don't know, Finn, if you can look that up while I'm talking here. Lindstrom might have been a guy they've already moved that number around on. And then again, I mentioned Drake London. They can sign him to an extension now. And if they do that, the 5th-year option number will decrease. So they'll free some cap space up in that regard. So what to do with guys? And a number of these guys they've already kind of made their decisions on. The first is Kirk Cousins. They're going to release him, I believe, on March 11th from his contract. He's been with the team. He played a decent amount this year. I had the numbers written down somewhere. I'll see if I can get it up here. as I'm talking and getting other guys up. But Cousins will be one of the guys that they look to move on from. Yeah, I have the numbers here. So they'll look to move on from him. They're going to eat some money on this. If they designate him a post June 1st, they'll save a little bit of money. We'll see what they do. But Kirk Cousins is going to be released, and I'm sure he'll have some type of market. They've released Darnell Mooney, a wide receiver. They free up about $18.4 million there. Cardell Hodge, they released as well. They free up a little bit of money there. And then Jesse Bates, who's a safety. He played well, but he's 28 and he's on a big deal. I think the Falcons were shopping him. I'm sure they would look to if they can't move him. And they need to create space. They can cut him, and depending on when they do it and how they do it, they'll free between $5 to $6 million dealing with him. So free agents. The first is Kyle Pitts. They've placed a franchise tag on him. So I think this was always the most likely move for them. They'll take a year, see how he does. They'll take the risk on if he plays well. They'll find a way to keep him. Or they can franchise him again a year from now. But they have franchise Pitts, and they're going to kind of see what he can do in one more year before deciding what they want to do. The next is Arnold Ebiketie. I probably butchered that name, but Abikady, thank you. For the right price, he might be back. He's kind of seen as a rotational piece with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., both playing on the edge for them. So I'm sure at the right price, they'd look to keep him. He had a pretty good year last year, and Spot Track has him valued at $9.3 million. For that price, I don't think they'll keep him, but keep an eye on him. Kaden Ellis has been outstanding for Atlanta since signing with the Falcons in 2023. He was top 10 in pressures over the last 3 years, and is someone I'm sure the Falcons would like to keep. He's 30 years old. Again, Spot Track has him valued at $9 million. I think he could get more on the open market. This is not a team that is, splashed for cash. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Leonard Floyd, he wasn't the player they hoped he would be. They signed him on a 1-year deal. I have to imagine he goes. David Onyemata was an important piece to this defense, which was pretty good this year. He's 33. I imagine the Falcons are hoping to keep him on a shorter deal. And I think they'd like to keep him if they can find a price that works for all parties. And D. Alford, this is another guy, played corner. Depending on the price, they could retain him as a rotational piece. Was good, not great for the Falcons. And again, this is a team that they don't have a ton of money, and depending on what they do with Cousins, they might be taking on some money versus freeing some money up. So they have some pieces that I'm sure they want to keep, and they're probably going to have to be picky on what they want to do. So their needs: quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, tackle, defensive tackle, and corner. Those are kind of the 6 spots I have. The biggest needs for this team are wide receiver, corner, and defensive tackle. A number 2 for Drake May kind of feels like for Drake London, kind of feels like a must. Kyle Pitts is back, so that kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of that. But this is a team that just cut Darnell Mooney. The next best guy on the depth chart is David Sills. This is a team that could use another option, maybe to complement Drake London. Corner feels very similar, right? A.J. Terrell's been really good for this football team. He's a number 1 corner for them, but outside of him, you're looking at Mike Hughes. If they don't bring back D. Alford, who really played in the slot, corner looks like a spot where they're looking to pair somebody up next to A.J. Terrell. And while the defense was good last year, they weren't great against the run. So adding a defensive tackle, really a run-stopping defensive tackle, and this could be an area that they target in free agency to get a bigger body in there, could really help this defense stop the run. Then there are like the needs of what do they do with what they have, and that's quarterback, and that's tackle. That they may not be needs, but they could be positions that if something pops up, they look to add. I'm sure they want to give Penix more time, but if Kevin Stefanski comes in and he isn't sold on Penix, I could see them looking to bring in a veteran quarterback to kind of compete with Penix this offseason. Maybe somebody that's familiar with Stefanski and what he does. Tackle is just kind of like a position they can sign to get younger. Both their tackles are 30. Maybe it's a position they look to key in on the draft and they get a younger tackle there. So tackle's a position like kind of like a sneaky need that this team, if they want to be proactive, they'll look to add somebody there. And then lastly is let's see what happens with James Pierce Jr. They took him last year. They gave up a lot for him, and to be honest with you, it was kind of proven right. James Pierce Jr. had an outstanding season for this football team last year. I think he had 8.5 sacks. I'm gonna look that up real quick while I'm here. He had 10.5 sacks for a rookie last year, which is an unbelievable number, but he's got some legal issues. So who knows what happens with him and whether he misses time next year. So end could be in defensive end, could be a position, or pass rusher could be a position that this team kind of looks to add maybe a veteran presence where if they have some issues with Pierce, his availability next year, they have a guy that can step in and play right away, or even maybe just a veteran guy you want in your locker room to help mentor him and Jalen Walker. So those are my needs for the Falcons.
Yeah, definitely echo what you're saying. Yeah, wide receiver is a big need for this team. Yeah, they cut so Darnell Mooney got released, cleared up about 7 million in cap space, but there's about they're taking on a dead cap hit of 11 million. With him going out the door here. Yeah, but definitely echo. Yeah, like I said, echo what you're saying. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. After that, there's not really much there to catch passes from Michael Penix, or if it's not Penix, I'm sure I agree. I think they're going to bring some other type of veteran quarterback in here. Maybe like, you know who I wouldn't be surprised ends up here? Like a Joe Flacco, honestly. I could
Okay.
see him maybe
Yeah.
following like Stefanski over from Cleveland. Plus, I don't know, maybe Matt Ryan wants somebody to hang out with from his draft class. Maybe I don't know. That's kind of interesting with him being the president of football ops over there now. But yeah, definitely wide receivers a big need. And I really like Darnell Mooney too. But I guess they wanted to just find somebody else who maybe younger and maybe who right. Mooney had a good 2024, but 2025 last year wasn't that great. Uh, Cornerback, yeah, AJ Terrell, he's still really good, but they could really use somebody on the opposite side of him, so that position is not kind of looked at as a liability. And then, yeah, I have defensive line here, right? More depth up there, defensive tackle, especially in the middle. As you mentioned, David Animata, I believe, right? I think he's a free agent as well. So they have, they have a couple of guys on that line that they're gonna have to replace some players.
And they don't have a ton of money.
But they do have a lot of money. Right, exactly. Clearing up the Cousins contract helps. So free agent fits here. So one guy I had listed here again, a Stefanski connection. I mean, this was they re-signed Pitt. Well, they didn't re-sign Pitts. They gave him the tag, but I actually had here David Njoku here as maybe if they wanted to do some kind of like double tight end set here, somebody who could stretch the field. But again, Atlanta's keeping Kyle Pitts, so maybe that's not as big a fit right now. But as far as wide receivers here, this could be maybe a Mike Evans spot. Maybe if they wanted to bring in a veteran guy, maybe Stephon Diggs, who just got cut this week. So, but either way, somebody needs to come in here and be a number 2 option to Drake London on the outside. As far as corner goes here, Greg Newsome, could be the starter opposite of AJ Terrell, another guy who spent some time in Cleveland with Stefanski. Right, Cleveland traded him to Jacksonville during the season, and now he's a free agent. So maybe Stefanski would like to bring him back and lock down the other side of the field while Terrell's on the opposite side. And then defensive free agent I have here, John Franklin Myers is considered like the best defensive tackle really of the group. He can play on the edge too, but there's familiarity here. They kept Jeff Ulbrich as the defensive coordinator. Ulbrich coached him when Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator with the Jets. So there is some familiarity here in the system. Very, very versatile lineman. He can be very effective, whether it's against the run or the pass. But yeah, Falcons, kind of again one of those teams who really kind of underachieved last year. They really got they really missed the mark there, getting kind of left out with a three-way tie in the NFC South. That kind of knocked them out of the playoff opportunity there. So, but yeah, Falcons they got some work to do in Stefanski's first year.
It's kind of like what we've talked about with each of these NFC South teams that we're now finished with them. It's funny, right? Like all of them aren't really probably close to competing. Maybe the Bucks are, maybe the Panthers are, but if we're talking about making it to an NFC Championship game, they all feel far away, but
Mhm.
they all strangely feel close to being first in the division, which is all you need to make the playoffs. It's just such a strange division.
Mhm. Yeah, I think once I'm interested to see, once the smoke clears through free agency and through the draft, when we do like a season preview, this might be the most interesting division that we tackle.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
honestly, at this current point, I mean, it's only what, March 6th. I I don't know where to lean right now in
Yep,
this division. I
that's
don't.
fair.
So, all right. Well, that's the Falcons for you folks. Let's bring the wheel back up here. All right, let's get the Falcons off the wheel. And we'll go to the AFC here. And I took New England off, right? Yep, okay. Let's roll. Cincinnati Bengals. Get my Bengals notes up here. Bengals, of course, right? What is it? It's always we know how bad their defense was last.
Offensive line, offensive line,
Offensive
offensive
line
line,
too.
offensive line
Well,
every year.
actually, the offensive line wasn't as bad as it was. I shouldn't say it was. It wasn't the liability that it's been in the past. I will say about the Bengals offensive line this past year. So the Bengals entering 2025, right? They had Super Bowl aspirations, but that quickly spiraled out of control. They go 6-11. They finished third in the AFC North and a third consecutive season without making the playoffs. So week 2 is when Joe Burrow suffered a grade 3 turf toe injury and he was forced to miss 9 games. And during that stretch, the Bengals go 1-8. So what happens? The Bengals trade for Joe Flacco midseason, and he plays pretty well. 1,600 passing yards, 13 touchdowns. You might recall Burrow returned to the team Thanksgiving night. They beat the Ravens in that Thanksgiving night game, and he showed flashes of his elite self. But right, it's late in the season at that point. The Bengals are in too deep of a hole to dig out of. Jamar Chase, though, again, phenomenal season. 125 catches, 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns. Chase Brown runs for 1,000 yards. T. Higgins catches 11 touchdowns. Even like I said, the offensive line was even a little better. They were not the liability that they were in past seasons. Now the defense. The defense finished dead last in many statistical categories for the second season in a row. And this was, if you might recall, they switched coordinators, right? So Lou Anarumo, he was out, he was let go. Al Golden was brought in, and Golden really could never implement a defensive identity to this team. They finished 31st in yards allowed. They missed a lot of tackles. They were ranked as the 3rd worst tackling team by PFF. Like, they have key players on the back end, such as Geno Stone and Jordan Battle. Those guys missed as many as 20 tackles this past season. They couldn't stop the run at all. Teams were averaging 5.2 yards per rush against them. Their young players even struggled to develop. Guys like former first-round picks, guys like Shamar Stewart, he battled injuries this past year. Miles Murphy, he only had 4.5 sacks himself. So very, very rough year for the Bengals defense. Free agency. The Bengals are coming into this offseason. They have over like $50 million in cap space. They have plenty of money in here to bring in some guys to help that defense. One of the big names, right? Trey Hendrickson is going to be their biggest free agent. He wasn't tagged this past week. He battled a hip injury that limited him to only 7 games this past season. He still was elite in those games, generating 23 pressures. He had a 90 PFF pass rushing grade. Another guy who was going to hit free agency for them on the offensive line, Dalton Reisner, who they actually just re-signed today. He signed a 1-year, $5 million contract. He only allowed 2 sacks last season. So they're keeping him as part of that offensive line group that did, like I said, wasn't a liability. It was improved compared to previous years trying to protect Joe Burrow. Another guy who's up for free agency, Geno Stone, the safety. He struggled. Like I said, he missed a lot of tackles last season, but he remained a key part of their secondary rotation. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he's gone. And then another guy I have here, Cam Taylor-Britt, who's a cornerback, very physical corner. He should probably have some significant interest from other teams on the market. He does have kind of the typical corner boom or bust play style. So I don't know if the Bengals are going to be interested in keeping a guy like that on their team, considering how big of a liability the defense was overall as a unit last season. So talk about coaching a little bit. So Zach Taylor, he's the head coach, right? He has complete control over the offense. He's entering 2026 thoroughly on the hot seat. And he's actually the only AFC North head coach, right, coming back from last season. I will give him credit here, though, as he did evolve the Bengals scheme into a more, like, he tried to develop a more quick strike attack, getting the ball out quicker, which actually did help the offensive line, though, right, Burrow still got hurt. The Bengals consistently ranked in the top 3 in usage for 11 personnel, right? So it's 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back. So they liked that package to create more room for Chase and Higgins to operate. Taylor also retained his whole coaching staff from last season, which is very interesting. Even on the defensive side of the ball, the entire staff came back, which is crazy to me with how bad they were. And then defensively, Al Golden, right? So he's still there. Second year as defensive coordinator for the Bengals. He mainly in his past, he's mainly run like a 4-2 nickel structure. So you got 4 linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. It's a little different than when he was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, which is where he came over, right? He helped get that team to the national title game a few years back. He likes to put his corners in aggressive press man coverage positions, this way to disrupt the timing on the routes. So let's talk about free agents now that would fit the Bengals. So again, I mean, we know Burrow's injury history. Backup quarterback has got to be a priority. It just has to be. Maybe they try to bring back Joe Flacco, who I mentioned earlier could be an answer for the Falcons' backup job. Maybe a guy like Marcus Mariota could fit in here. Mariota could be a potential change of pace quarterback here, right? He has the ability to run. He adds kind of a different dimension that, if he has to come in and play, if Burrow's out, teams have to think a little more about Mariota running. Obviously, Burrow can move around a little bit too, but Mariota is more likely to take off and run if he sees the opportunity to do so. Defensively now, pass rusher. Hendrickson is gone. Jalen Phillips, John Franklin Myers, Kayvon Chason. We mentioned JFM and Kayvon Chason a little earlier. Jalen Phillips, right, is one of the possibly the top edge rushers in the league right now in free agency. He had top 10 numbers across the board when he came over from Miami to Philadelphia during the year. Bengals need a pass rusher, probably 2 here on both sides. As my notes go away. Great. Let me get my notes back. Cincinnati. So pass rusher is definitely a big need for this team. Pass rusher, linebacker is a big need as well. I'm going to make a prediction here, Tommy. Ready? Here's my first prediction of the night. This is where Devin Lloyd ends up from the. This is where I think he's going to end up. I don't think the Jaguars are trying to re-sign him. I don't know if they're going to come to an agreement as of it's Friday around 4:30 at this time. They still haven't come to an agreement. Lloyd would be a perfect guy for the middle of this defense. He can blitz, he can cover tight ends, and most importantly, he finishes tackles. The Bengals defense did not do last year. He was top 3 in PFF grades this past season. We're probably looking at a contract here to 18 to 20 million, but the Bengals can make it work. And then I also have in here, if they're really looking to improve the interior part of the offensive line, Ted Karras, their center, is a free agent. If they don't bring him back, maybe you look at a guy like Connor McGovern from Buffalo. He's also a free agent. So you can look in that direction too if you really want to give Burrow a good veteran under center to kind of glue together that offensive line and add more interior offensive line depth for them.
Yeah, I think defense with this football team, especially secondary, you mentioned Geno Stone. He's going to be a free agent. He likely isn't coming back. So they're going to need to replace him. And ideally, while Geno Stone was good, he hasn't been as good the last couple of years. So finding a bit of an upgrade there would be great for this team. This team needs corners. Cam Taylor-Britt is entering free agency. He's been up and down for Cincinnati. DJ Turner, the second, was good for them, but they still need more than him. Edge is interesting because on paper you think it. Their first round pick from 23, their first round pick from 25, Shamar Stewart in 25, and Miles Murphy from 23 are both edge guys. So I do wonder if they give those guys the nod. I mean, at this point, this will be Murphy's 4th year in the NFL. So they've seen him, but they probably want to get a veteran presence there as well. And then linebacker, like this team just, you mentioned it best. This team just needs guys who can find the football. So I have to imagine linebacker and even just, better tackling corners and safeties will be in their market as well. And then, I think if anywhere on offense, it'll be the interior of this line. Two of their guards, including Cordell Volson, who I believe started some games for them this year, on the interior of free agents. So again, even if those guys are brought back, that might be an area where this football team looks to improve a little bit. And then, like I always look at a team like this and look at their running back and go, can they get like a little bit more dynamic of a guy out of the backfield? I know they like Chase Brown. I know they like Samaje Perine, but can we get a guy that's maybe a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more change of pace? But the focus for this football team is going to be on the defensive side of the field and staying healthy. Can they keep their best players healthy? Can they keep Joe Burrow on the football field? Can they keep T. Higgins on the football field? Can they keep Jamar Chase on the football field? There's a lot of money invested into those guys. They need to keep them healthy.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I think you said it really well. I mean, their defense needs everything. That's how bad their defense was this past year. And yeah, I think coming into this year, I was really surprised that they didn't that Zach Taylor wasn't let go after this year. We saw some other coaches that did get let go in that division who, maybe they shouldn't have been let go. In my opinion, I said I think I've said it on this podcast. I'm really high on Stefanski. I think he's a really good coach, but yeah, Zach Taylor, I don't know. It doesn't surprise me, I guess. Cincinnati, they've kind of a considered odd ownership group the way they operate sometimes with specifics, but
Yeah, I'm with you as you get the wheel up. I'm with you on Zach Taylor. I feel he's been given more than enough time. I'm sure this is very much he's very comfortable. Joe Burrow is very comfortable with the coach, and if that's the case, then so be it. But yeah, it just at some point it feels like it might be a change of voices needed. And maybe this is an offseason they kind of go all in and really spend some money. They have it. They have a lot of money locked up into these skill guys on offense that are going to come due soon. So maybe they'll look at it and go, we have like a 2 to 3 year window, but it's got to start with improving the defense.
Definitely. All right, we're going to switch over to the NFC side here. All right, I'm going to go for another one of my predictions. I got to nail this one, baby. Let's go. This is a team I really want to talk about right now, Tom. Give me the 49ers. Oh, man, I missed it again. What's up with me tonight? Green Bay Packers.
Alrighty. The Packers. It was a very Packers season, finishing 9-7-1 and making the playoffs, only to bow out in the first round after blowing a second half lead to your division rival in a game that Packer fans are probably still having nightmares about. It feels like much of the same for the Packers. And the question I'm sure they're asking is this the offseason that they kind of go and be a little bit more aggressive than people want, or probably be as aggressive as people want to try and improve this team. They retain Matt LaFleur. They've signed him to a new contract. That was a hot button topic. I'm sure we'll talk about our opinions on coaches at another podcast soon, and I'm sure people would love to hear my opinions on Matt LaFleur. They did bring in Jonathan Gannon to call the defense. Jeff Hafley, of course, is headed to Miami to be their head coach, and Cam McCord will be their special teams coordinator this year. So where's this team? They are currently under the salary cap. They do not have a ton of money, and they are a team that they have a number of options that they will do. They haven't done much yet. So what can they do? The first thing they can do through extensions or players they'll look to extend, the first one being Christian Watkins. Their second round pick from 2022 has flash signs of being the receiver that they hope for. The problem, heading into year 5, Watson has yet to play a 17-game season. Do the Packers take the risk, which could be a small risk, and look to extend Watkins before the end of the 2026 season? If they do, they'll probably be able to lower his number a little bit. Then the other one is Devontae Wyatt, their other top pick from the 2022 class. The 27-year-old was outstanding again for the Packers before getting injured. Wyatt is entering a contract year. Do the Packers look to extend him now and keep him there long term? So how can the Packers free up some money so that they can be a bit more aggressive? Well, the first thing they did is they restructured Xavier McKinney's contract. So I already did that. They can restructure Jordan Love's contract, free up about $8 million there. They can free up Josh Jacobs' contract, free up $8 million there. They can restructure Aaron Banks, their starting guard, and free up around $13 million there. And then they can restructure Nate Hobbs' contract and free some money up there. They did do the McKinney one. I don't think they've done anyone else yet. They currently sit at like $5 million under the cap. So this is a team that I don't know if they're waiting or maybe they're going to look to move on from a couple guys that we mentioned that I'll mention coming up and then see what they want to do with some of these contracts. But they do have the ability to free up some money. So what to do with players? Really two. Elgin Jenkins. They can save almost $20 million if they cut him by March 1st. That's past. So I have to imagine that they're going to keep him on the roster and he's going to be a part of this team next year. And then the next is Rashawn Gary, who we mentioned at the top of this podcast. There were rumors that they were looking to trade him. He's got 2 years left on a $5 million deal. If they trade him pre-June 1st, they'll save $10 million. If they trade him post-June 1st, they'll save almost $20 million. He came out today with a very strange Instagram post thanking Green Bay and then deleted it. So that leads me to believe his future is probably done, and the Packers might look to cut him. When Finn talks about Green Bay and what he sees on them, I'll kind of look into his contract. I didn't really think he was a cut candidate, so I'll look into that when Finn's talking and see if maybe cutting him makes sense in that regard. So they're free agents. The first is Rasheed Walker, offensive tackle. He's probably the top offensive tackle in the class. He had a 93% pass block win rate. They have former first-round pick Jordan Morgan, who they played at guard a little bit. I can't see this team keeping him. Spotrac has him valued at $20.6 million. He's going to get paid, and the Packers just don't have that type of money right now to keep him. The next is Romeo Doubs. I'm sure they'd like to keep Doubs, but again, they spent a first-round pick on Matthew Golden a year ago, who I'm sure they're going to use in a bigger role. So I imagine Doubs, who Spotrac has valued at $12 million, will hit the open market. Malik Willis was really good for the Packers when he played. He's going to get paid a decent amount by a football team looking to whether they make him a starter or look to have him compete as a starter. Malik Willis will likely be elsewhere. Then they have Quay Walker, the linebacker, who was really solid against the run, lacked a little bit in coverage. They have Teron Hooper, who was a 2024 draft pick that they apparently like. All signs point to he's going to hit the market, and then we'll see if there's a number that the Packers maybe entertain. And then Sean Rehan, who was played center for them last year after injuries, was a starting guard the year prior. He's one I think they're going to look to try to retain and keep, has some flexibility along that offensive line, was better at guard than he was center, but will help kind of fill one of what their needs could be. So their needs, as listed: running back, tackle, center or guard, edge, defensive tackle, and cornerback. The line is an interesting spot because this team has so many interchangeable spots. Zach Tom will start at tackle. Anthony Belton was a rookie. Jordan Morgan can move to tackle if Walker leaves. If they can somehow keep Walker, he can flip into guard. And if Rehan is retained, they can still move Morgan around as they want. Any way you slice it, though, I think this team looks to add an interior lineman, probably with some position flex, a guy that could play center or guard. While their safety play is good and they got solid cornerback play from Nate Hobbs, I think the Packers are still searching for a true number one corner. Remember, they traded Jair Alexander a year ago, and they haven't really replaced him. So if they're in a world where they can go out and spend money, corner would be a position that they're probably looking to add. So keep an eye on corner. More depth in defensive tackle. Wyatt's really good, but I think the rest of that could be looked to be upgraded. So defensive tackle's a spot. And then again, pass rusher, they have Micah Parsons. They just paid him a ton of money. He's going to be their guy, but is Micah going to be back for the start of the season? It's up in the air. They're going to need to look to add a little bit of pass rush help, especially if they get rid of Rashawn Gary. That's going to be an area they look to. And I just like to see this team add, like a pass-catching, playmaking running back out of the backfield. You like Josh Jacobs. They thought they had it in Emmanuel Wilson. I don't think they do. So if they can just add kind of a guy who on third down when you roll out Watson and Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden, if you can add a running back that can be a mismatch there, I'd like to look to see them do that as well. So those are my needs for the Packers.
Yeah, so it says releasing Rashawn Gary here would free up close to $11 million in cap space for the Packers, which they really need. Like you said, yeah,
Yes.
they're like right now they're close to like 5 million available, and that's after the Xavier McKinney restructure today. So Packers not a lot of room to operate right now. Let's also not forget that your boys own the first round pick uh, from them too this year. So there's not a lot money right now that they have to operate for free agency, and they don't have really the assets right now, even for the draft. Right, the next 2 years actually, they don't. So right, without first round picks. So not a lot of not a lot of like I said, not a lot of assets here. Yeah, my biggest needs for the Packers, cornerback, they have no depth at all. They released Trevon Diggs after what a one snap playoff performance, right? As you mentioned, Nate Hobbs, he's a pretty solid player, but there's really no veteran experience there. They have guys like Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine. They're entering the final year of their deals, so they need to bring in uh they need some veteran guys on the back end to help them out. Interior defensive line, yeah, I had that here too. Devontae White is a good player, but he was hurt a lot late during the season, and their defense got exposed. They need a big body like run stuffer in there to pair with Wyatt. And
And they
as we
had that
talked.
in Kenny Clark, and they traded him to Dallas, and that made sense because that contract wasn't great, and he didn't perform on the contract, but they really haven't replaced him either.
Yeah, they haven't, and now it sounds like Rashawn Gary's about to go out the door too. So, cap hit of $28 million. I can't fault them for wanting to push him out now. And then offensive line, yeah. So actually, last year the offensive line. So PFF ranked the Packers' offensive line in 2024. They were ranked the sixth best offensive line in the league. They dropped to 19th in 2025. And left tackle Rasheed Walker, as you mentioned, probably one of the like you said, one of the top tackles on the market. Sean Rehan, he's a free agent as well. And then Elgin Jenkins, right? Another guy with a high cap number. I have $24 million here. It sounds like from what I had read, and this is just some stuff online, that they might move on from Rasheed Walker as right. They have the guy behind him, Morgan, who could maybe slip right in and be the left tackle going forward. It might be what they have to do since right they're pretty tight here with their cap situation. So looking at their free agency fits here, guys who I think they could bring in. I mean, after going through their free agency, or excuse me, after going through kind of what their cap space available is, they're not going to be in the Jamel Dean market. I cannot see that happening at all based on how they're currently set up with their cap situation. I have a guy, I mentioned him a little earlier, Cam Taylor-Britt here. He could be an option for them. There were some reports that I saw the Packers might have some interest in him. I guess I think there's some guys on the Packers staff maybe that worked with him with the Bengals or something. I think I saw. And then defensive line here, they could use a guy like a DJ Reader from the Lions, a Sheldon Rankins from the Texans, right? One of those run stuffers, one of the better run stuffers in the league would massively improve the Packers front. And maybe if you get a guy like DJ Reader, you're stealing him from a division rival in the Lions. But yeah, it's very tight right now, the Packers situation. I really can't see them really improving, making a mass improvement here with the current state of their financials going into the offseason. Let's go to.
And the Pack are very much an organization that they're going to try and develop their own guys. Matthew Golden, Jordan Morgan. Geez, that's a tongue twister. Those are guys that they spent high first round picks on, and they're going to give those guys a chance to develop.
Back to the spin wheel. All right, so AFC. All right, so we got. All right, so we got 4 teams left in the AFC. I gotta get this prediction right, Tom. Let's see. Let's go with. Give me the Colts. I really want to talk Colts. Do I have it? Dude, it's a rough night, Tom. It's a rough night for me, man.
I mean, you batted 1,000 last week. It's tough.
Damn, dude. We got Buffalo for folks that heard the wheel go off. Let me get to my Buffalo notes. Buffalo Bills. Sorry, Bills fans, but you know what? You know what, Tom? You know what one of my favorite days of the year has become as a Jets fan?
When the Bills lose?
when the Bills are eliminated from the playoffs. It has become a yearly
Yeah.
tradition, which I've enjoyed over the past what, 7, 8 years? They've been something like that. But anyway, so Buffalo Bills, right? 2025, right? Enter in the season as usual, right? One of the favorites to get to the Super Bowl. And they reinforced their status, right, as an offensive powerhouse. They were very run heavy, as they had the number one rushing offense in the league, right? Led by James Cook, who set a franchise record 13 consecutive games with a rushing touchdown, which is pretty phenomenal. Cook also led the league in rushing with 1,600 yards. Josh Allen remained one of the elite QBs in the league, finishing with 3,600 passing yards and 25 touchdowns. He also rushed for 14 touchdowns on the ground, which led all quarterbacks. And he had most of the assistance that he got in the past was they did finish 12th in scoring defense, right? The Bills go 12-5, but they finish behind New England in the AFC East. So they need to go on the road in the playoffs, something they're not really too accustomed to doing early, right? In first round, they defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars wild card weekend, but right, they get to the divisional round against the Broncos, and right, it's the same old story. Josh Allen turns the ball over 4 times, which led to 16 Denver Broncos points, and the Bills lose in overtime to the Broncos in Denver 33-30. Few days later, the Bills fire Sean McDermott and promote Joe Brady to the head coaching role. And Joe Brady, with him, brings over Jim Leonhard from Denver as his new defensive coordinator. So let's talk about free agency. So the Bills enter the offseason. They have 26 pending free agents, a very, very tight financial situation. So at the right before this we recorded, they were only sitting with about $10 million over the salary cap. There's been a lot of changes, which I will get into, right? DJ Moore just got traded over there. I just saw some other news today. They actually just made a ton of moves right now, Tom, by the way, over the past 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, they
So
released a bunch of guys,
they
right?
released a bunch of guys. So Taylor Rapp, the safety, he just got released. He was entering his age 29 season. I don't know if he's really that healthy, though, right? He suffered a knee injury during the season. Teron Johnson, another corner who's been
Who's been there
kind of,
forever.
yeah, he's been there I was about to say a mainstay who's been there a long time. He got released today. Right. He was a former 4th-round pick. He was very good at basically he was a career slot corner, but he's been able to be moved around the formation a lot defensively, and I think what's happening in his regard is maybe he's just not a fit for what Jim Leonard's gonna want to play. But it will clear over 8.6 million in cap space, his release. Um, so they cut both of those guys too on the back end today. Another guy I mentioned a couple of guys actually I mentioned a little earlier. Another guy, Connor McGovern, the center, he's a free agent. Yeah, he was a key component for that offensive line. That was the number one. Another guy I'll mention is AJ Epinesa. I mentioned him a little earlier. I don't know if they're going to bring him back. He was basically just a key rotational pass rusher for them. Mainly he was used on 1st and 2nd downs this past season, as he typically came out on 3rd downs, and that's when you saw guys like Joey Bosa on the field rushing the passer. Another guy actually who just got cut today, Curtis Samuel, right? He was a receiver there in Buffalo. I'd say kind of 2 straight disappointing seasons for him. He'll probably have to latch on somewhere else to be on a 1-year deal with some team as depth. Another guy though who's actually I think he is hitting the market too is Matt Milano, right? Milano was considered kind of like a franchise cornerstone for them back in like what, 2017. Though he's been banged up really the past 2 years, a lot of injuries for him. He played in 12 games this past year, recorded about 70 tackles and 3.5 sacks, but it's possible that Buffalo might want to move on here and try to replace him, as as I said, he's been very banged up over the past few years. Let's get into coaching a little bit here. So Joe Brady, right? So his whole approach since he came over since he started calling plays in Buffalo, he really wanted to shift away, right, from like the Josh Allen hero ball. So he's done a great job finding ways for basically all their players to contribute. Last season, the Bills actually had 5 players catch at least 33 passes. And like I mentioned earlier, too, with the running game, James Cook's coming off a rushing title here. Josh Allen completed a career high 58.3% of his passes under Brady last year. And now, despite the balanced offense that the Bills did have, they still finished second in the league in explosive plays. When I talk explosive plays, plays that went at least 20 plus yards from scrimmage. Under Brady, the Bills ranked first in red zone efficiency, so scoring touchdowns on 68% of their red zone trips. It helps that Josh Allen, being as mobile as he is, and he usually tries to barrel over people as he tries to run into the end zone on most plays. So like I said earlier in the summary, Jim Leonard's coming over from the Denver Broncos to be the new defensive coordinator. So he's coming over from Sean Payton's staff, where he was the assistant head coach slash defensive passing game coordinator. If you might recall, if you're a college football fan like myself, he was formerly a defensive coordinator at Wisconsin and was the interim head coach there during the 2022 season. Leonard, with the expectation is he's going to move away from a 4-3, which is the defense that was ran under Sean McDermott, and going to shift more to an attacking 3-4 system. So there's going to be a transition here for the Bills defense, which I mean, personally, I really think they need in that front seven. They could use a transition. I mean, Leonard's system's going to really need a nose tackle here, someone who could eat up double teams, and they're going to ask some guys to transition around. You know, a guy like Greg Rougeau, for instance, he might be expected to transition from a traditional defensive end to more like a stand-up linebacker sometimes. I would expect Ed Oliver. He's going to be a guy who's going to move out wider, maybe to penetrate the B gaps rather than fighting centers on the inside. And I would think that Terrell Bernard, he's going to become like that field general, and I think he'll be given the freedom to blitz the A gaps and match up more with tight ends up the seam, as he's got the speed to keep up with them. So let's talk about free agents that fit here. So again, right? So we talk about the Bills. They just made a big move here for DJ Moore. They're investing a lot of money here. So DJ Moore, he's going to be 29 when the season starts. You could make a case that the days of him being a true number one receiver are over. He's coming to Buffalo with a $28.5 million cap hit. So maybe they'll try to rework that. We'll see what they do. They gave up, like I said, they gave up a second round pick in return, and the Bills have basically committed about $40 million in guarantees for him. And this is going all the way into like the 2028 season. At least that's the most recent report that I had read. So giving up a lot here. This is going to take them out of, right? We talked about earlier in the week, Tom, right? They could be a team that could look into the number one wide receiver market, whether that's trying to sign a guy like Alec Pierce. Maybe they look into trading for, AJ Brown or Brandon Ayuk, maybe something like that. This will take them out of that trade market they'll enter the year with DJ Moore basically as their quote unquote number one receiver. Originally I had them also looking at maybe they could look at a guy like Marquise Brown. Maybe they'd be in the market for like a Mike Evans or Rashid Shaheed, maybe a Romeo Dubs. But I think the Bills at this point will try to go with cheaper options to try to fill out their receiver depth chart. Defensively, I mentioned him for the Packers. DJ Reader is a guy who I really like. He could play the nose. He's 31 years old. But he's coming off a solid run in Detroit. In 32 games with the Lions, he received really good marks in his rushing defense. He'd be a good short-term option here for the Bills. Maybe they draft a guy in one of the later rounds, try to develop him behind them. And like I said, as a 31-year-old player, the contract maybe for a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe it's not a killer. Maybe it's like, there's probably going to be a couple of teams maybe wanting him for run defense. Maybe it's like in the $4 to $5 million range, or the Bills want to flip that. But either way, they're going to need a defensive tackle here to fit Jim Leonard's scheme.
Yeah, we're on the same page with this. Their biggest need right now for me is probably that stand-up edge rusher, guy who can get after the quarterback. Maybe they try Ed Oliver in one of those roles, or try to get him rushing quarterback a little bit more from one of those defensive tackle, like inside edge type positions. But otherwise, it's Rousseau, and then they're losing the two guys they had last year. So edge or I guess like stand up edge rusher is probably their biggest need for me. And then like the wide receiver thing's interesting. I mean, this is a lot of pressure on DJ Moore, and there are plenty of people who think he can do it. There are plenty of Bears fans that are telling you right now, thank you for taking him with that money because he can't do it. This team still needs another wide receiver. When you look at this team, I like Khalil Shakir. DJ Moore's great. Can we get a number two to pair with those guys? Let Shakir play in the slot a little bit. If they can go out and get a guy to help play with those guys, now I'm liking their wide receiving core. Now I think there's enough there that can help Josh Allen and even James Cook on offense. The interior of this line, there are some question marks with them. Connor McGovern and Dave Edwards are both free agents. I know they re-signed a couple guys that maybe will get the first cracks if they can't retain either. It doesn't sound like they're going to retain either. McGovern hasn't closed the door, but he's made some comments being like he thinks his time in Buffalo is done. And David Edwards, it looks like, is going to get some good money in free agency, so he might be gone. And then the secondary as well, especially the safety position. They have three or four guys you mentioned that were free agents. So they need to find somebody to partner with Cole Bishop, who played for them this year and was pretty good. They've tried to get creative with the cap stuff. Would you say they have money? They don't have money?
They do. They do have some money. Well, now they have even more after the releases today. So I'm not sure what the up the minute numbers, but they were about like 10 million. Actually, they were coming into the 10 million over the salary cap.
Yeah, I remember
So
seeing that.
they still could try to work out Josh Allen's. He's got a $56 million cap hit. They could try to restructure that a little bit. And they did, like I said, they just cut like 3 guys. So they're working on it.
Yeah, and then they have other options. I was Dawson Knox on that list?
I believe he's a free agent.
I thought he was under contract. I thought they
Maybe
could
he
cut
is.
him.
But he
Maybe
was
a
a guy,
Curtis
yeah, he'd
Samuel,
be a cut.
Taylor Rapp, guys like that. They have ways that they can create more money for themselves. But this is a football team that kind of feels like they're teetering in the wrong direction. They've been so good for so long, and for the first time in a long time, kind of feels like they may not be one of those premier teams in the AFC. I mean, they still have a quarterback and a running back combo that's as good as anybody's, but this team has a lot of holes, and we'll see. Jim Leonard is very highly respected and well talked about. He was interviewed for a number of jobs, so there's no doubt that a fresh perspective on this defense might help it. But changing that scheme and we'll see how the pieces fit. But it almost feels like a risk, and it feels like there's a football team trying to change its identity a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely agree here. It's going to come down to the defense for this team. I mean, they were just, I mean, they were pitiful against the run last year. How bad they got completely run over most of the time in the games that they played last year. Again, one of the big reasons was Ed Oliver was hurt. But with that being said, you got to hope that other guys can step in and be able to, make some tackles, penetrate some gaps, try to take down these running backs. So yeah, the Bills definitely going into next year. I mean, heck, I'm not gonna forget, man. You picked them already to win the AFC East going into next year. So
Well,
it sounds like
that's the funny
you might
thing.
have some questions
No,
already based on what's
that's
yet
the
to
funny
happen
thing,
here.
right? If we look at the AFC East, I mean, and again, this is all before we see what the Pats do, but there's a world where the Pats play a tougher schedule next year, and they're just not as good as we thought they were a year ago, right? And then it comes down to, no offense to your Jets or the Dolphins, but neither of those teams are screaming competitors, and the Bills still have enough, and they're going to have the best quarterback in the division, and they arguably have the best playmaker in James Cook. So, yeah, for as much as I feel this might be a team trending in the wrong direction, they still very well might be the favorites for this division. And again, we talked about it with the NFC South. Like, part of it is just getting into the playoffs and then seeing what you can do from there.
Dude, giving the Jets no chance, man.
Sorry. We'll
Dude,
see.
it's been
We'll
when was
see
the
what
last
they
time the
do.
Jets actually won the AFC East?
Can I guess?
Go for it.
2009?
Further back than that, dude. 2002 was the last time this team won the division. Yeah, dude. So, all right, let's get off of Buffalo here. Get back on the wheel. Where's my mouse here? All right, let's get Buffalo off. All right, we're going to the NFC. I only got 3 teams left in the AFC. How about that? NFC time.
We're flying well today. We're making good time today.
Dude, we're killing it. Yeah, so for all you folks who may be complaining that, the episodes are too long, guess what? We're flying through these teams tonight, dude. But that's because we're experts. We know these teams. Did our research. What we got? Oh, little division rival, it looks like, Tom.
The Birds.
Philadelphia Eagles.
All righty. So the Philadelphia Eagles, despite winning the NFC East back-to-back in back-to-back years for the first time since 4 a team has done that. It felt like a failed season for the defending Super Bowl champions. Drama felt like it followed them weekly, with star A.J. Brown being front and center. Declined play from Jalen Hurts in a defensive unit that was one of the best in football a year ago, struggling last year, and suddenly Philly has some major questions heading into this offseason. Where are the Eagles? They are currently under the cap. They do not have a ton of money, but they have ways to create some more. So, how can they do that? Extension candidate. Jordan Davis, defensive tackle. Davis is coming off of a career year in almost every category. The Eagles will want to keep the former top 15 pick that fell into their laps. He'll be playing on a 5th-year option. I look for them to try to extend him and then potentially lower that number through extending him. What to do with players? We'll just start with the guy front and center, A.J. Brown, wide receiver. It sure seems like there are issues between Brown and the Eagles. Despite having another 1,000-plus yard season, Brown showed it during multiple games and voiced it on those kind of fun late-night Twitch streams where he was basically being like, don't have me on your fantasy team. He expressed his frustrations with the offense this season. They've since moved on from Kevin Patullo, who called the offense or parts of it a year ago, and hired Sean Mannion to call the offense this season. Do the Browns and Eagles give it one more go? That would be the easiest option. A trade of Brown pre-June 1st would see the Eagles take on a $43.5 million cap hit, a number that would see the Eagles fly into the negative cap. He is a very interesting player, as it seems like he's kind of walking back what he said, right? Like recently, it sounded like he was more upset with Kevin Patullo than he was maybe the Eagles as a whole, and the Eagles have since moved on from him. Kevin Patullo, that is. If the Eagles were to trade him pre-June 1st, they would be taking on $43 million in dead cap, and they would take on a negative $20 million in cap savings. If they designated a post-June 1st, or if they waited until post-June 1st, the Eagles could actually save money on Brown's contract. That's why I continue to this point still believe that if the Eagles trade A.J. Brown, it will be post-June 1st. Now, I don't know if you can trade him and then designate that a post-June 1st and trade picks be involved. The Pats are the team that you hear rumored with him the most, and the latest report is that the Eagles aren't budging on what they're asking for Brown, and thus the Patriots aren't interested in trading for him right now. So we'll wait and we'll see. But he is by far the biggest kind of up-in-the-air player that they have. The other two were Lane Johnson and Leonard Dickerson, and both of them are coming back next year. So the Eagles line, which declined in play this year in part because of injuries, will have two guys back that if they can stay healthy and play at the level they were playing at the year prior, this offensive line is still going to be really good. Then they have Michael Carter Jr., who they traded for. They can cut him before the start of the league year, free up almost $9 million. I don't think they've done that yet. I still think that's going to be a move they look to do. So we'll wait to see with that. And then there's Tanner McKee, who we talked about earlier this week as an option for teams that are looking for a quarterback. Do they look to trade him? Do they look not to? I think he'll be traded if the Eagles get what they want. So they're free agents. The first is Jalen Phillips. They traded for him at the deadline. They gave up a 2026 third-round pick. Started really solid, but faded as the year went on. The next is Nakobe Dean, linebacker. Despite being a third-round pick in 2020, he was a third-round pick, in the 2022 draft. He contributed in 24 and 25. I know Eagle fans are hoping to keep him. I think they're going to let him walk. Jahad Campbell is really good for this team, and you have to imagine he'll be the guy that they fill him in with. Reed Blankenship, 26 years old. He's been a steady contributor in this secondary. played 95% of the Eagles snaps in 25. He was signed as an undrafted free agent in 22. And then there's Dallas Goedert, who was a 2028 second-round pick for the Eagles. He's been a constant in their offense. He's coming off of a career high in terms of receptions and touchdowns, but he is 31. And there's Shahad Dotson and Adoree Jackson, guys that have been in and around this team. They traded for Dotson. They signed Adoree Jackson. He really struggled. The Eagles are in an interesting spot because they don't have a lot of money to spend. And they are a team that's been rumored with guys like Max Crosby, which I'll touch on in needs. So I think a number of these guys are probably going to walk. Dylan Phillips may be the exception if they're really happy with him. Maybe they look to keep him instead of going after a guy like Crosby. But I'll get into their needs, and then I'll talk about something I read about the Eagles and Crosby today. So their needs. And I've listed wide receiver, tight end, edge, corner, safety. I think this team really needs to improve their secondary. Quinyon Mitchell is really good. Cooper DeJean is really solid. They're happy with Makubu from Texas, but there's a world where they lose Reed Blankenship. There's a world where they lose, not a world. It's most likely they're going to lose Adoree Jackson. This team needs some help on the back end. And then edge. Edge is a position that this football team, they have Jordan Davis, they have Jalen Carter. They took the swing on Jalen Phillips. It didn't really work out. Other than that, this team was not really that effective when getting to the quarterback this year. Jackson Hunt, Jackson Hunt, who is another one of the guys they drafted in 2024, who they really, really like. He led their team with 6.5 sacks. Other than that, it's Jordan Davis, it's Moro Omomu. This team needs an edge rusher. You're going to hear about Max Crosby, the latest report. And again, this is Ricky Scoops. It depends what you think of Ricky Scoops. I know Finn's laughing. Like, he's been pretty reliable. He had a report today that basically said the Eagles are willing to deal Jalen Carter or add Jalen Carter in a deal if it means getting Max Crosby. So they're definitely in for Crosby. And if it's not Crosby, then I think they turn their attention to a Jalen Phillips or a guy like that to fill the pass rushing needs. And then wide receiver will become a need if this team trades A.J. Brown. Tight end will become a need if this team doesn't bring back Dallas Goedert. They don't have guys kind of ready and waiting. And in terms of like wide receivers, they traded for Jahad Dotson. That didn't really work out. I don't think they'll bring him back. So those needs become needs if they can't retain or if they move on from what they have. But this is still a football team that, if you believe in their quarterback, has a pretty good roster and a pretty good defense. So it'll be interesting to see what this team does this offseason.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Tom. So let's say the Eagles trade A.J. Brown, right? Could Devontae Smith be a number one wide receiver for this team?
I think he can be a number one in terms of productivity, in terms of catching and scoring touchdowns and stuff, but he's going to need help. I don't think he's a guy that if you signed, I mean, let me pull the free agent list up here. If you signed, Hollywood Brown to play next to him, I don't think he'll be nearly as productive as he was if he has another really solid guy next to him. I really like Devonta Smith. I think he's really good, but I think he's that much better when he has A.J. Brown next to him. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, everything you read is that Brown's fine. Patulo's gone. He'll stay with the Eagles. He's okay with it. But it seems like there's something there with him and Sirianni. But there's also a world where, when we talk about Nick Sirianni, there's a world where he's not back next year. There's a world where this team finishes second in the NFC East next year, either misses the playoffs or makes it and loses in the first round, and they move on from their head coach. And then maybe A.J. Brown's fine with it. So they're in a weird position. They're another team that, like, when you look at their division, they're probably going to be favorites. So can they make the moves necessary? But if they move on from A.J. Brown and they don't sign Dallas Goedert, is there a lot on this offense that scares you? They have Saquon Barkley. They have Devonta Smith. You like that. But the quarterback wasn't that good last year, and there aren't a lot of threatening options on that offense for him to throw to past that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, the Eagles, right? Howie Roseman has his price for A.J. Brown, and that's what it's going to be. So if you're going to give up maybe 2 ones, or if it's a 1, a 2, and a player, something like that, I mean, he's not going to move until he gets what he wants here. So at this point, I mean, I still think A.J. Brown will be moved. But like you said, I think it's going to be like a post June 1st um, with the way that contract is looking right now. And again, if they move him, I think one of the biggest, you were just talking about weapons on the offense, right? The Eagles really don't have a tight end, or at least one on the roster that's really of note. Right? Like you said, Dallas Goedert, he's entering free agency. Um, and then outside of him, right, it appears, right, that Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, they'll both be back for this season. So it doesn't sound like offensive line is not an immediate need, but it's something that they're going to have to keep in the back of their minds. Maybe one of the later picks in the draft. Maybe Howie splurges on a backup offensive lineman, maybe in like the third round or something like that. And then, yeah, I agree. Edge rusher, right? They traded for Jalen Phillips midseason. He was pretty solid coming over there. I would think they probably would want to get a deal done with him. But I think what they'll want to do is they probably would want to bring in like a heavier edge. Just someone that could complement their speed rushers like Nolan Smith. And we'll see. Yeah, I mean the Max Crosby rumors. I feel like Max Crosby is like rumored to go to like any team right now. I feel like it's all over. Like, oh, you hear the Eagles, you hear the Bears, you hear like a bunch of other teams, the Patriots. Like you hear all these teams, like these teams that are trying to contend for the Super Bowl. Everyone's trying to, it sounds like everybody's checked in on Max Crosby on what the Raiders might want for him. But
Well, we talked about it on Friday, and you asked me to buy or sell, and I didn't think he'd be traded, or at least traded before the start of the new league years or this week or whatever we said. I didn't think it was going to happen this soon. It sure sounds like it's close. If you believe Trey Wingo, who's kind of been on top of this from the beginning, it sounded like Dallas thought they had a deal done for Max Crosby 2 or 3 nights ago, and since then they've been usurped by somebody, and everybody's believing that it's either the Eagles or the Bears. So it sounds like he's going to get moved, and yeah, the Eagles may be the top team for that.
Mhm. I'm sure we'll talk more about it probably when we get to the Bears, but talk about some free agents that fit here. Again, the Eagles, like there's not a lot of room, right? There's not much cap room here to operate with. But they, like I said, they need a tight end. I thought maybe this could be a great spot for like an Isaiah Likely, somebody who can really, stretch the field here, somebody in the middle of the field that could really help Jalen Hurts, maybe like a David Njoku too. But again, I don't know if the Eagles are really going to be in that market with the cap situation the way it is. One guy I think they could sign on the defensive line, kind of an under the radar guy, a guy like Kwity Paye from the Colts. Like if they don't re-sign Phillips, Paye is like one of the best run defending edges available. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they want to bring him in as kind of a heavier edge that their rotation kind of lacks right now. I could see somebody like that. And then I had as an offensive lineman, they're probably obviously they're probably not going to spend big here, but I had Tevin Jenkins here originally. If Landon Dickerson were to retire, Jenkins could be a fit here. Even if Lane Johnson retired the following year, Jenkins has been able to play guard and tackle in his career. He could be a guy that, if Lane Johnson were to retire, Jenkins could kind of just, fit right over into that tackle position, at least in the short term until Philadelphia wants to look for whoever long term their long-term option at the position. But but that'll be but AJ Brown, dude, that's going to be the biggest storyline that follows this team around probably for the next what maybe in the maybe the KC Concepcion, Denzel Boston, maybe that area of the draft, and maybe they'll be looking for their
If
Brown replacement to pair with Smith.
if
Maybe that's
AJ
kind of what I'm
Brown isn't
thinking.
traded, as you're getting the wheel up, I'll just throw this out there. This is just a thought. If AJ Brown isn't traded and they don't go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds of the draft, I think that's a pretty good indication that they're not looking to move on from AJ Brown seriously. I also want to mention with this football team, they don't have a lot of money, but they draft really, really well. And Howie Roseman is as aggressive as a general manager as you will see. He will make deals like the Dodson deal, where he gets a guy that he feels can really help this football team, and it won't work out, but he's going to go and try and do that. So keep that in mind too when it comes to the Eagles.
Mhm. All right, let's go to the AFC side of the wheel. All right. This has to be one I predict, right? I mean,
Yes,
there's 3 teams
one
here.
in
If I
three,
get this wrong,
one
man,
in
I'm
three,
like, it's a cursed night, man. I don't know.
1 in 3.
Let's go. All right. Give me the Colts. I want to talk some Colts. Dude, it's just not my night, Tom. That's it, man.
Can't bet 1,000 all the time.
I know, man. Hey, man, guys go into the Baseball Hall of Fame, they bat 300. Man, let's be honest, right? I mean,
Great
that's
point.
still
Great point.
that's what we do around here, man. We're still Hall of Famers. All right, here we go. Cleveland Browns. Actually, it is an interesting team to talk about. All our Cleveland fans out there rocking out in Cleveland. All right, let's see here. All right, so the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns go 5-12 last season, right? They finished last in the AFC North. All year, they struggled with offensive consistency. Despite the struggles on offense, Myles Garrett was his phenomenal self, breaking the single season sack record with 23 sacks. He won Defensive Player of the Year, and their second round pick, Carson Schwetzinger, won Defensive Rookie of the Year as he finished with about 150 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 interceptions. I'm sure you saw in the news, Miles, please stop speeding so much in Cleveland, bro. You don't need to speed. Where are you trying to go, man, at like 1:30 in the morning speeding, bro? Anyway, so despite the 5-12 record, the Browns had a top 5 defense last season. They were ranked number 4 in total defense, allowing only 283 yards per game. The pass defense was ranked number 3, and the pass rush accumulated 53 sacks. Of course, right? Garrett's 23 helped with that. The offense, let's talk about the offense. The offense was a revolving door due to injuries and inconsistent quarterback play, right? So Joe Flacco started the season, lasted only 4 games. They turned to rookie Dylan Gabriel, who started 6 games, but he ended up suffering a concussion in week 11. That ended his run as the starter. And then Shedeur Sanders takes over from there, the other rookie. He helped the Browns win 3 of their 5 wins over the final 7 weeks. And remember, with all this QB movement that was going on, this was mainly due to Deshaun Watson being out for the season with a torn Achilles tendon. So Kevin Stefanski is fired. Todd Monken, the former Ravens offensive coordinator, is hired as the new head coach. So let's talk about the Browns. So they entered the offseason with $18 million in cap space. Now, Watson had a cap hit of $80.7 million. Today, they restructured his contract. They were able to free up about $36 million in cap space. He's actually entering the final year of that record-setting contract he signed with the Browns back in 2022. Since he signed that contract, he's appeared in 19 games in 3 seasons. They have 31 pending free agents. Majority of those free agents is all their offensive linemen. Their starting 5 offensive linemen are all free agents this season, which is crazy to me. Let's talk about some of the big free agents now. So Devin Bush, the linebacker, we mentioned him as possibly, right, free agent fits on some teams that we've already looked at. At one point, right, Devin Bush was a guy who was really looked upon as a bust when he was drafted by the Steelers, a former first-round pick. He signed a 1-year deal with the Browns this past season, and he actually finished second in tackles on the team, and he actually led the team in interceptions. He had a very, very good season, so he's going to capitalize on it in the free agency market when someone signs him to a pretty hefty contract. Another guy who's definitely leaving the team, David Njoku, the tight end. He already came out on Instagram, officially announced he will not be back with the Browns, as it looks like he'll be moving forward. The Browns look like they're going to roll with, right, their rookie Harold Fannin Jr. as their starting tight end, right, which makes a lot of sense. He had a pretty good rookie season. Offensive lineman, like I said, the big need here. Tevin Jenkins, who I just mentioned, maybe as a fit for the Eagles if they're looking to add depth to their offensive line. Joel Bitonio, who's been one of their long-standing, he's played tackle and guard there. And then Wyatt Teller's another guy there. So those major contributors on the offensive line are heading to free agency. There's been rumors that Bitonio could retire, and Teller sounds like he wants to move on to potentially play for a contending team. Overall, I'm not surprised the Browns are moving on from some offensive linemen here, as the Browns' offensive line was pretty bad overall last season. And actually, earlier this week, the Browns already made a move. They made a trade with Houston. So Titus Howard, at the beginning of the league year, when it opens, Titus Howard's being traded from Houston to Cleveland. They're likely going to have him fit into the right tackle position. So let's talk about coaching now. So Todd Monken, right, the former OC in Baltimore. Before that, he was at Georgia, where he won multiple national championships as their offensive coordinator. Monken is a guy who likes to create space for his receivers to operate. He likes using a lot of no huddle, actually, varied tempos to prevent defensive substitutions, which, we saw it in Baltimore, and even at Georgia. At times he leaned on 12 and 22 personnel, which is, right, the use of multiple tight ends and running backs. So this was an interesting hire. So this is a first-time DC that he's bringing in here, right? So Mike Rutenberg is the new defensive coordinator. He's taking over for Jim Schwartz, who kind of had a falling out with Cleveland. You might have heard it in the news over the past few weeks, right? Jim Schwartz wasn't happy that he did not get the head coaching job. He felt like he earned it with how good the Browns defense was last year, right? Because under Schwartz, the Browns were a top 5 unit. So Rutenberg here has pressure on him now to live up to how good Schwartz's defense played last year. So for those that don't know, Mike Rutenberg, so he comes from like the Robert Saleh, Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn mold. So I would expect to see a base 4-3. They're going to use a lot of wide 9 concept, right? So where the edge rushers are lined up wide outside, like even past like the offensive tackles and the tight ends, right? Because the idea is that the wide 9 creates better angles that favor pass rushers to exploit offensive line. So let's talk about some free agency fits here. Here's another prediction. I'm throwing out another prediction for a free agency fit here. I believe this is where Packers left tackle Rasheed Walker ends up. I think Cleveland will make a move to bring him in as their new starting left tackle. Like I said, Browns are going to be offensive line heavy here. They really need to improve the offensive line. They opened up some more cap room with the Watson restructure. Dylan Parham's another guy who's with the Raiders. He's entering free agency. He's played both guard spots. He's played center in the NFL. He even has experience at tackle too when he was at Memphis University. So if the Raiders don't re-sign Dylan Parham, I think this would be a really good fit for a rebuilt Browns offensive line, bringing him in here. Another guy they could look at, Ed Ingram, guard from the Texans. He was coming off a solid season in Houston. He could be a good upside signing for them here. Again, Connor McGovern from Buffalo, who we've mentioned plenty of times already on this pod. The Browns need offensive linemen. Like, I need this big water after this long podcast we're having. That's how much the Browns need offensive linemen. One defensive guy I'm going to call out here who could be an option as a running mate for Carson Schwetzinger is Quincy Williams, the former Jet player. If they don't bring back Devin Bush, Rutenberg was an assistant with the Jets. He coached Quincy Williams over there. Quincy was an all-pro player when Rutenberg was his position coach. So Quincy Williams could come in, maybe act as like that quarterback of the defense. And yeah, I think next to Carson Schwetzinger, they could probably be pretty good running mates there. So, but yeah, Cleveland, it's got to be all offense. And whether it's not offensive line, I want to point out wide receiver too, because outside of Jerry Jeudy, there's really not much there. So they need to bring in some more weapons if their intent. And the early rumor is, I don't know where Dylan Gabriel is going to fit into this situation, but Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson are supposed to be battling out for the position of quarterback in training camp.
What a
That's at
joy
least
that sounds like.
that's the early expectation right
Wow.
now. So we'll see how that plays
I'll
out.
tell you, that brings excitement, doesn't it? Those 2 names. Yeah. For me, this offensive line, they need to sort it out. They need to figure out who of the guys that are leaving they'd like to retain. I don't even know if they'll retain any of them. They tried for Titus Howard. We'll see how that goes. But they need line, so I think that'll be, whether it's tackle, whether it's guard, or center, wherever. They need to figure out their line and improve on it from a year ago. Wide receiver, I mean, the Jerry Jeudy thing, they've tried it. I was a big fan of his out of college. He really hasn't done great since then, and it sounds like he's had his issues in Cleveland, so he'll be there, but can we add something to play next to him, whether it's like a Wan'Dale Robinson or Rashid Shaheed, maybe like a speedster to play there? So that as well. A linebacker, it doesn't sound like Devin Bush is going to be back, and the rookie was really, really good last year, but get somebody to play next to him. And then safety, Grant Delpit's good. They want to play him in the box a little bit more. So can we get a deep safety to kind of take that part of the field away? And yeah, you mentioned quarterback. They're going to roll with these 2 this year. I don't even really expect them to look for a veteran. I think it's going to be Shedeur and it's going to be Deshaun, and they're going to play the both of them. And then if Shadeur's good enough, they'll roll with him next year. If he's not good enough, they'll look to be aggressive to get a quarterback next year when Watson leaves and they free up a little bit of money. I don't know how active they'll be. They have some money, and I guess they're not really retaining much, right? You just went through it. I don't think many of these guys they're going to look to retain. So I'm sure they'll be active in trying to get a couple linemen in here. And then they have pick 6 and pick, I think, 24 in this year's draft. Their draft last year was as good. Actually, I'm just going to say it. I think their draft was the best draft from the 2025 class. So this is a team that drafted really well last year, got 4 guys that were all contributors. That's not counting the quarterbacks either. So they're going to feel good about rolling that back again next year, drafting well, addressing some of these needs with their first round picks, their second round picks, their day 2, day 3 picks, and then see what type of team they can build from there.
Yeah, they probably need some help at running back too, I think too, right? Travion Williams is there, but they
They have
probably need
Junkins too, though, who
Junkin. That's right.
they drafted him a year ago, and he played really well when he was healthy. So they have him as well.
I wouldn't be surprised with Monken coming in there, a new offensive coach, a different type of system. I wouldn't be surprised if the offense looks a lot different next year. We know it will from the offensive line, probably from the receivers too. So it's going to be interesting to see, Todd Monken put his fingerprints on, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
And we're gonna have an idea as you get to wheel up. We're gonna have an idea of like where he's really looking by what type of lineman they sign. And I have to imagine this is going to be a team that looks to run the football first. That's been what you mentioned it, what Monken likes to do. But they're the best playmakers on this football team are probably their running backs. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what type of lineman they go after. That'll probably give us a little insight on what type of offense they're looking to do.
All right, NFC wheel time. Got 3 NFC teams left here. San Francisco 49ers.
Okay. All right. So, San Fran, the 2026 season will be considered a disappointment by most 49er fans. They've yet again had to deal with a mountain of injuries, and despite going 6-5 in the toughest division in football and winning a first-round playoff game, the 49ers feel no closer to reaching the Super Bowl, something they haven't done since 2024, where they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. With many of the pieces in place, is this the year the Niners go all in to try to get back to the Super Bowl? So the 49ers, where are they at cap-wise? They're under the cap with some money to kind of play with in free agency. So extension candidates. The only real guy that they might consider is Jake Tonges. Was solid for them in this past season with 5 touchdowns in 17 games. The question will kind of be what they see as his future with George Kittle being out next year, or do they consider tendering him? I haven't read if they've done anything with him yet, but he might be a guy they look to kind of keep, maybe even if it's on a shorter deal with Kittle being out next year. So he's an extension candidate. Restructure candidate Nick Bosa if they want to. They're under the cap. If they want to free up more money, they can convert his 2026 salary to a bonus and free up just over $20 million. And now kind of the what to do with guys. The first one is Mac Jones. And the question is, will a QB needy team take a shot at him? Another one of these guys that kind of went through the school of Kyle Shanahan. He looked good when he played for the Niners this year, and it sounds like there are teams that are kind of exploring what his value is to the Niners, and if that value works, whether they'll trade one of their assets to get a guy that they think could be a starter. And then there's Brandon Ayuk, and this just quite frankly has been a disaster. Ayuk hasn't played in 2 years. He was cleared to play this year, but he and the 49ers felt it was best for him to sit out. It sure feels like he kind of quit on this football team, which is disappointing when you kind of think of where he was for this team a couple years ago. He'll probably be designated a post-June 1st cut, where the Niners will save about $7 million, excuse me. And then he'll be free to go where he wants from there. Free agents. Jawan Jennings, he stepped up big for the 49ers this season, but it's likely the end of the road for him. Spotrac has him valued at $22.6 million. I don't see the Niners looking to spend that type of money on him, and he'll look to get a payday and go somewhere else. Eddie Pinheiro, their kicker, I think they'll look to bring him back. He's been really good, was 28 for 29. in kicks this year. I think his long was a 59-yarder. He did miss 4 extra points, but outside of that was really solid. And Spencer Burford stepped in and played well for this team at left guard after injuries. I imagine they look to keep him unless there's a market for him to kind of go out there and get starter money somewhere. So needs for this team: wide receiver, guard, defensive tackle, cornerback, safety. This team desperately needs a playmaker on offense. Losing Ayuk and having no Kittle, it's all going to fall on McCaffrey. Even if they find a way to keep Jennings on a contract that fits everybody, this is still a team that really needs to get pieces to help Brock Purdy. So wide receiver, I think they could be aggressive looking, maybe to trade for somebody, or maybe they kick the tires on a guy like Mike Evans in free agency. Guard. While Spencer Burford played well, there's no guarantee the Niners keep him. Add in the Trent Williams of it all, and it sounds like if Trent Williams isn't if they can't figure out the contract situation, they might look to release him. It sure feels like Trent Williams wants to leave if he can't get either a new contract or a contract that works for all parties. So before you know it, that could be the entire left side of that line gone. So guard could be an issue, and even if they retain Trent Williams, tackle could become an issue for this team looking to get a younger player. Defensive tackle, the Niners lost Malik Collins and Javon Hargraves, and they never really properly replaced them. Rookie Alfred Collins showed promise, but he's going to need some help on the inside. Getting Bosa and Mikael Williams back and healthy should help, but this team needs another defensive tackle, maybe 2. And then the secondary, they were incredibly young this year. Jair Brown, a 2023 pick from Penn State, and Malik Mustafa, the rookie from Wake Forest, they like. Upston Stout showed flashes as a rookie, especially in the second half of the season, but this team would really benefit from having a veteran corner in that room, maybe a Rasul Douglas who played well, and maybe even a veteran safety as well. So that's the Niners.
Yeah, this 49ers team is they're very interesting to me. Just I feel like last year, right, they went through a lot of injuries last year. They definitely had their players banged up and on injured reserve. I feel like this is another team though that the talent's starting to get a little older, I feel like. Um, you got the offensive line, right, which was a major factor last year in their inability to help Brock Purdy. Trent Williams getting older. Center Jake Brendel, he's entering his age 34 season. Spencer Burford, right, he's going to be a free agent too. Tom, I'm getting like a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in terms of their roster, maybe getting to the point where, guys are starting to, fade off, so to speak. I really feel like the 49ers are almost in like a similar situation. Brandon Ayuk, as you mentioned, is on there. He's on the outs. Jawan Jennings, who I like as a receiver, he's a free agent. I don't know if they're going to be able to bring him in and bring him back. And Ricky Pearsall, he's really struggled to really stay healthy. And overall, I feel like the depth really needs development. Kittle, right, tore his Achilles. He's 33 years old. We don't know what his status is going to be next season. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this could be a spot, like if Kittle's actually going to be out for like the season, maybe this could be a spot for like a Dallas Goedert or something like that. Maybe they could sign like someone like him on the veteran side. I just really feel like this roster, and outside of even defensively, like you still got Nick Bosa, right? Mikael Williams, they really like. Fred Warner's still there. I just feel like this is a roster that's getting, they've been to what, 2 Super Bowls in like the past like 7 years, a lot of NFC title games. I feel like they're kind of on the back end, so to speak, this year. And who knows, right, going forward with Purdy, if he's a guy, maybe he is kind of injury prone, and we'll see if he can we'll see if he stays healthy next year. But I'm really interested to see this team this upcoming year, not just through the offseason, what they do in free agency and the draft, but I think Kyle Shanahan this upcoming season, this is going to be a really good test for him. He's widely considered, right, like a top, basically 3 coach in the league. Let's see. I'm curious to see what the 49ers do this year. But in terms of like their needs, right? So I mentioned wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, and defensive line. They really got to get the trenches going. They really got to focus on that offensive line. Some free agent fits here. As you mentioned, wide receiver. I think they're going to be more on. I don't think they're going to be in the Alec Pierce market. I don't think they can really. Right? What's their cap situation? I don't know if they'll really be up there, but
They're not like a well weighed under the cap. Like they have money to spend and they can free more up if they want. I actually think they're going to be aggressive, but I'll let you get to your names.
I wouldn't be surprised, like, if they shop in that bit. Marquise Brown, I mentioned him a little earlier with Buffalo. Maybe he's a guy they look into. I don't think Christian Kirk has been cut yet. I think I saw that Houston might be releasing him. Romeo Dubs is another one. I think he could be a good scheme fit here, right? If he comes over from the Packers. You know who's a free agent? Debo Samuel. Maybe he'll be back. I don't know. Maybe they'll re-sign Kendrick Bourne. Either way, they need receivers. And then on the offensive line, Ed Ingram, who I mentioned earlier, big year for him in Houston. Maybe San Fran can make the money work. He could be a big upgrade on the interior. How about a guy like Joel Bitonio, who I mentioned earlier, a free agent from Cleveland? Shanahan, if you recall, was an OC in Cleveland for a little while. He's familiar with Bitonio. He could fit their zone blocking scheme. And then I have another guy here, Isaac Samalo. If they want to stay on the older veteran market, he could be a guard that they bring in. Even though he was a little banged up last year, he graded out as an elite pass blocker with PFF, and he can excel in both the zone and gap schemes. But like I said, there are injury concerns there. But yeah, 49ers really interesting teams to me going into this season, because the way I'm looking at it right now, I mean, we saw firsthand, right, that divisional round game against Seattle. Seattle absolutely beat the hell out of them. Right now, Seattle is definitely ahead of them, and I still like the Rams as being ahead of the 49ers. I honestly think the gap is bigger than like a lot of people might think from the 49ers compared to Seattle and the Rams.
I don't disagree with you, and I think that's a good point and a fair point, that maybe this is a team that's getting aged out a little bit. What Kyle Shanahan did last year was really, really impressive. So he's going to get guys back. He's going to get Fred Warner back. He's going to get some of these guys back. I think this could be an offseason that they are, aggressive because they feel their window might be ticking, or might be closing rather.
All right, so we've got 4 teams left. I've got all 4 of them on the wheel here. Our final 4, so to speak. We enter March Madness season coming up soon in a couple weeks, so let's get it going. If we go back-to-back NFC, we go back-to-back NFC. So figure 4 left. See what we got. Oh, here we go. Here's a team I want to talk about.
There you go. You wanted to talk about them.
Dude, talk about a team that's very interesting. Just like the 49ers, in my opinion. That's entering the offseason with a lot of question marks here. The Indianapolis Colts. Let me just pull up the Colts here. Where are my Colts notes? There are my Colts notes. Okay. So the Indianapolis Colts, right? As Colts fans know, truly a tale of 2 seasons. So the Colts got off to an 8-2 start. Excuse me as I cough there. And they were the hottest team in the NFL at 8-2. They were the first team in NFL history, if you recall this, they were the first team in NFL history to score on their first 10 offensive possessions of the season. Daniel Jones wins the starting job, right, from Anthony Richardson, and he helps put together a high-octane offense that was averaging over 30 points per game during the first 2 months of the season. Then, coming out of their Week 11 bye, the Colts lose 7 consecutive games, becoming the first team in NFL history to finish with a losing record after an 8-2 start, right? They finish 8-9. Week 14, Daniel Jones suffers a season-ending Achilles injury. And I will say this about the Colts. They lost a ton of close games last year. 7 of their 9 losses were by 1 possession or less. Let's talk about some positives, though. So Jonathan Taylor led the league with 18 rushing touchdowns. Quentin Nelson remained his dominant self, right? He was a second-team All-Pro. Alec Pierce cemented himself as a legitimate deep threat wide receiver. He led the team with 1,000 yards receiving. And their rookie, Laiatu Latu, had a rookie record 7.5 sacks and 3 interceptions last season. The Colts were a top 10 scoring offense all season, but their passing defense finished 31st in the league. And as you recall, at the trade deadline, they acquired Sauce Gardner from the Jets. They gave up 2 first-round picks and wide receiver Adonai Mitchell in that trade. Of course, Sauce wasn't really able to put his mark on the defense, as he was banged up for most of the season when he was with the Colts, as he had a calf injury. All right, so the Colts. Enter the offseason. This was, as of last week at least, this was with $35.5 million in cap space. They need to address their pass defense in free agency. However, a lot of internal free agents, and I don't think they're going to be able to afford all of them. Sorry, Colts fans, I don't. So let's start with Daniel Jones, right? He's coming off the Achilles injury, unsure of what the timeline currently is, but they made it a priority to bring him back. So they give him the transition tag, which was valued at, what was that, Tom? It was about $40 million, right? When we spoke
Yes.
about it
Yep.
earlier earlier this week. So he was given the transition tag. So as we know, they're interested in signing him to a long-term contract. I don't think any other team, though, and I mentioned this on our pod on Tuesday, I don't think any team's really, gonna want to go and give Daniel Jones $40 million a season for a guy who's coming off an Achilles injury. So at this point, best bet is he stays in Indianapolis. Now, because they gave the transition tag to Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce is going to be a free agent. They still have time to negotiate with him. They've got till what, Monday at 12 o'clock? He's coming off his first 1,000-yard season. He's become the team's premier deep threat. We're talking about a salary here that's going to be over $20 million per. It might get close to $30 million per a season. We'll see. Like I said, they're actively negotiating with him, but all signs are pointing to him hitting the market. There was actually a report that came out recently that when I say Alec Pierce basically came out and said he wants to listen to other teams' offers. He feels like that's, which he has every right to, and I don't blame him at all. You might as well hear it out from every team what their offer is, and they're going to make you a a very wealthy man, Alec. So listen to them all. Some of their other big free agents, though. Nick Cross, the safety, he's coming off a really good season. I've mentioned him on a couple of other teams' previews as maybe a free agent that could perk some interest. He's coming off a year in which he had 120 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and interception. He was really good in run support, and he led all strong safeties in solo tackles last year, according to PFF. Another guy who's a free agent, Braden Smith, he's their right tackle. He's turning 30 this season. He did end last year with a neck injury, so I don't know if the Colts are really going to be looking to bring him back. Kwity Paye is a guy I mentioned earlier. I thought he could be a good fit for the Eagles. He's a really good run defender, but the pass rush numbers just aren't there for, he was a former high pick from the Colts, and he hasn't lived up to his billing as a pass rusher. I don't think they're going to bring him back. And actually, it was just in the news this week. So Zaire Franklin, who's a linebacker, the Colts are apparently speaking with teams about trading him. Those that don't know, Zaire Franklin's actually a former 7th-round pick out of Syracuse. He was a Pro Bowler a couple of years ago, second-team All-Pro in 2024. He still had a pretty solid season last year, but he is 30 years old, and it sounds like the Colts want to get younger at that position. So let's talk about coaching now, getting to the coaching philosophies of the team. So, right, Shane Steichen's the head coach. He's got full control over the offense. He's a guy over his career. He's gotten a lot of credit for the work he's done with quarterbacks, right? He was with Justin Herbert with the Chargers, spent some time with Jalen Hurts with the Eagles, and now Daniel Jones, right, he's credited with helping Daniel Jones elevate his game last season. Right. So basically what he's credited with Steichen is simplifying the field for quarterbacks, giving them clear pre-snap reads based on defensive alignments. He likes to use it inside zone running game along with gap looks paired with deceptive pre-snap motion to create hesitation for opposing defenses. His offense does call for a lot of vertical shots and stretching the field. He likes to use a lot of RPOs to potentially confuse linebackers and open up easy completion windows for quarterbacks. Now, defensively, Lou Anarumo is the defensive coordinator. This is going to be his second year with the Colts. He's a guy, he's basically a guy who doesn't like to stick with one specific coverage on the back end. Anarumo likes to mix up cover 1, cover 2. He'll use quarters sometimes to prevent QBs from knowing basically what the coverage is pre-snap. So it tries to make some disguises. He prioritizes simulated pressures, which I feel like I say that for almost every team because all the big name defensive coaches are successful with simulated pressures, and it's basically the run of the league right now with how defenses are built. Nickel is typically the heavy base defense here, a 4-2-5 or sometimes a dime, a 4-1-6, as those were the majority of the packages the Colts ran defensively during the 2025 season. The run defense typically features a 5-man front. Sometimes they even have 3 defensive tackles on that 5-man front to create a an 8-man box. Let's talk about free agents that fit the Colts now. So, right, Alec Pierce is going to have to be a priority for them to re-sign. I don't think they're going to re-sign him. I think it's going to get too expensive for them. There's also been rumors about Michael Pittman. They could potentially release Michael Pittman, which I think they would do if they want to bring back Alec Pierce. I don't think they're going to release Michael Pittman, though. I think he stays with the Colts, and I think Pierce will leave somewhere else in free agency. So free agents that fit here, Trey Hendrickson, mentioned him a little earlier with the Bengals. He's probably the top free agent pass rusher on the market. He'd be a good fit for this defense. He knows Anarumo's coaching scheme from the days in Cincinnati, and he would help solve Indy's 23rd ranked pressure rate. Remember, they were 31st in the league in pass defense, so they need to improve that pass rush. The only issue could be, right, the Colts, when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, the only issue could be if the Colts can get the money to work, as they do have to prioritize signing their internal guys. Another guy I had here for a guard position, maybe even a guy who could move over to right tackle, is a guy like David Edwards. They could use some interior depth, the Colts, on their line. He fits the gap running scheme that Shane Steichen prioritizes. And like I said, if Smith walks, they need someone as a right tackle on that right side to shore up that offensive line. And another thing, I feel like people aren't talking about the Colts here, is backup quarterback. We don't know Daniel Jones' return timeline. Anthony Richardson has requested a trade. What else do they have at quarterback right now? I don't know who the third guy is. I don't know what's going on there. So there's a chance they might have to invest into like a 1-year guy. I mean, maybe like a Tyrod Taylor type player, something like that. Somebody who might have to start the season, as the starting quarterback until Daniel Jones is ready to play.
Riley Leonard is a third string quarterback.
Oh, that's right. Dude, Notre Dame. How did I forget about Riley Leonard?
Played a couple games for them this year. Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head for this football team. I think they need some edge help. That'd kind of be the main thing. They got 3 guys that are set to hit the open market. Latu, the rookie last year, I think, was pretty good this year for a second-year guy, but they finished, I think, in the bottom 10 for pressure rate in 2025. This team offensively with the line, it's going to depend on what they do. Do they keep Braden Smith? Can they? Do they try to adjust pieces there? I have to imagine they're going to look to try and solidify the right side of that offensive line. Wide receiver, I can't see Pierce staying here. I think he's going to get a massive contract. We threw the Patriots out there before. I think he's going to have other contenders. So do they hit the market? This is a team that cap-wise is in trouble. They do not have a lot of money to work with. Wide receiver is an area as well. And then defensively in the front 7, I think it's just a matter of getting it younger, a little bit more athletic. They have some decent pieces there. Like DeForest Buckner is still playing well for them, but he turns 32 in March. Can they get a little bit younger along the front 7? And then, I think quarterback's spot on. I mean, if you're getting Daniel Jones, it's on the tag for a year. There's a world where he doesn't play great. So is this a team that maybe second round, third round, day 2 pick feels really rich right now for them? But if there's a quarterback there in the draft that they like, do they take him, or do they look to get a proven backup?
Riley Leonard, if you're watching this podcast, I apologize for forgetting about you. God, glory, Notre Dame. Thanks for getting us to the national title game a couple years ago. All right, we'll move on from the Colts. Let me see, get the wheel back up. We got 3 teams left here, Tom. 3 teams left. Let's see who we got. Zona. Cards.
The Cardinals. It probably feels like forever since that 11-6 season in 2021. For the 4th straight season, the Cardinals have failed to finish above 500. This season ends with a 4-13 record and new head coach in Mike LaFleur. The Cardinals started 2-0 before losing 14 of their final 15 games, dealing with major injuries to stars Kyler Murray, running back James Conner, wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. This offseason will focus squarely on what the team does with Kyler Murray, which we've found out, and getting pieces that fit what Mike LaFleur wants to do. So first, cap status. They are under the cap And I believe, let me see here. Where are they here? Can I find them? They have money to spend. And we'll see what that changes once we get into Kyler Murray. So, extension candidates. Paris Johnson, their 2023 top 10 pick, has been as good as they hoped he'd be. Arizona will pick up the 5th-year option and then work to lock him down to a long-term deal. If they can do it this year, they'll get that cap number down, give them a little bit more flexibility. They can restructure Josh Sweat, who's really good for them. They can free up $7.7 million doing that. Now, what to do with players? First is running back James Conner. If they cut him before March 15th, the Cards can save around $8 million. They haven't really let it be known what they want to do with him yet, so there's a world where they keep him. The next is Davlin Tomlinson, another one that if they cut before March 15th, they can save $9.4 million. They'll take on almost $7 million in dead cap. They signed him to a 2-year deal in 2025. Again, this isn't a team hurting for money, so they might look to keep him. Bilal Nichols, an edge that they signed from the Raiders in 2024. They can cut him at any time and get almost $6 million back. Bunting, the corner, missed all of 2025 with a knee injury. Cutting him will save $9.5 million. I think I read that they're going to look to move on from him. So he'll probably hit the market at some point. And then Kyler Murray, they're going to release him. We haven't really I don't think they've talked about if they're going to designate it a post-June 1st yet or not, but he is going to hit the open market. I believe when the league year starts up. I'm just going to pull his contract up here and see what it will look like. So if they designate him a June 1st cut, they'll take on a lot of dead money this year, not as much in 2027, but actually save $5 million against their 2026 cap. If they cut him when the new league year starts, they will lose some money this year and take on a massive cap hit. So it'll be interesting. I have to imagine, and we've talked about this. We talked about it Friday. I have to imagine they designate him a post June 1st, and then he'll be free to go where he wants, and they'll save a little bit of money. They'll eat a lot of it this year, but they'll save money there. And then there's Budda Baker. His name's been brought up in trade talks. I think it would make sense. This kind of feels like a rebuild for the Cardinals, right? Like we're going to talk about their needs, and they have a number of them across both the offense and defense, and they're not a team that looks like they're going to win. So Budda Baker still has some value. His contract's up in 27. My guess is he'd want to play for a contender. They can save $13.1 million if he's traded before March 15th. That doesn't look likely. So they'd save less if they trade him after. But again, he might be a guy that if they can get a couple draft picks, maybe a day 2 pick, maybe something for next year, they might look to move on. So Cardinals free agents. One is Jonah Williams, the right tackle. My guess is that this is a guy that they're going to just look to move on from. They signed him on a 2-year deal. He hasn't been great. They'll probably look to let him go. The next is Calais Campbell. It sounds like he isn't retiring and he's not returning. He was one of their better players on defense last year, 6.5 sacks, 43 total tackles, 9 for a loss. He's 39 years old. So again, for a team that's going to look to get younger, they're going to look to likely move on from him. Jalen Thompson, the safety, was really good for them, a former supplemental pick. He's been solid for the Cardinals in his 6 years. He's 27. I think at the right price, they'd like to keep him. But again, he's going to hit the open market, and he's going to get a good contract. He's been rumored with a lot of teams. And at 27, are you really looking to sign a guy to a 3, 4, maybe 5-year contract that you may not be competing in the time that he's here? So he'll probably look to go. And then it's guys like LJ Collar, Will Hernandez, Calvin Betchum, couple wide receivers they had on this football team. They'll probably look to move on from all these guys. Needs for the Cardinals: quarterback, wide receiver, tackle, guard, edge, corner. They have a lot of areas they need to address. The first is quarterback. I imagine the Cardinals will look to bring back Jacoby Brissett or run it back with Brissett. But with Mike LaFleur taking over, it'll be interesting to see if they get a quarterback that kind of fits what he wants to do a little bit better. Regardless, I think they look to either add a quarterback in the draft or they'll look to sign maybe a younger guy of this quarterback class that maybe had higher pedigree and hasn't worked out where he was. Anthony Richardson is a name that I think could make sense for this team, but I don't know if they'd want to trade assets to get him, but maybe look to acquire a quarterback in the realm of that. A former first round pick, day 2 pick that didn't thrive in his first place. Maybe they can get him cheap. Marvin Harrison Jr. has potential to be a number one, and Trey McBride is really maybe as good a pass catching tight end in football. But the Cardinals need more to help, especially in a LaFleur run offense. So look for wide receiver to be a spot that they target. Tackle and guard will both be areas on the end of offensive line for this team that they need to address, especially guys who fit what LaFleur wants to do in the run game, be able to pull and get second level. So more athletic guards and tackles. They could use another edge. Josh Sweat had a really solid year last year, but you look at the rest of that defense, and there's not much there when we talk about rushing the quarterback. And then in the secondary, Will Johnson was awesome for them this year. Outside of that, they don't have much in way of safety. They're losing. They're most likely losing Jalen Thompson, maybe Buda Baker. Safety could be an area that this team looks to improve in as well. They have money. I like to think they're going to shop and look to get young players. And this is going to be a team that focuses on the draft where they have 3 picks in the top 100, and who knows, maybe they look to add more. But this is a team that looks like it's going to be looking to add younger players to their football team and really figuring out the quarterback position.
Yeah, this is a team that needs a lot of work. This Cardinals team. I really like some of the pieces they have on offense. Like I like Marvin Harrison. People might say like he hasn't really lived up to the hype yet, but I mean he's kind of coming along. Hasn't really had much to work with. I mean Kyler. I mean Jacoby Brissett, right? He's still the quarterback there. It's looking like at least there's been rumors, right, about that he could be available in trade talks. I don't think that makes any sense for the Cardinals to really trade him away unless maybe they're blown away by an offer, which I don't think they will be for Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I really like Trey McBride, the tight end there. He was a guy who I really liked coming out of Colorado State a couple of years ago. Um, yeah, I mean, the Cardinals, I mean, like you said, I mean, the offensive line needs a lot of work, right? Paris Johnson's there. He's holding down the left side, but the rest of the interior and the right side, there's a lot of question marks there. The defensive line, so they only had 30 sacks last season. They really need someone, as you mentioned, they really need someone to pair with Josh Sweat, which I think will probably be coming with the number 3 pick, whether that's like a David Bailey, maybe a Ruben Bain. But whatever they do, they need to address both sides of the trenches. This team is just there's so much work here. Like I'm not surprised, right? This was the Cardinals were the last team to fill their head coaching spot, and you could kind of see why. Like personally, like when Michael Floor was hired, like look, I was right. I'm a Jets fan. He was the offense coordinator with the Jets for a couple of years. I mean, I wasn't blown away from what I saw. Maybe, he was with Sean McVay, I think, for the past 2 or 3 seasons. So, 2 seasons. So maybe some of McVay maybe rubbed off on him for what LaFleur is going to be taking into this position. But man, I mean, when you're in a division like you're in the NFC West with, like we spoke about earlier, the Rams and Seahawks are powerhouses. The 49ers, right, in my opinion, they're not what they were. It's still a solid team. And then you've got the Cardinals just, I mean, it's going to take a couple years for this team to be competitive, in my opinion, and especially right. And the big storyline for this team is going to be in the offseason is going to be the quarterback. I don't know if they're going to necessarily get one this year. I think they maybe could be like a sneaky spot for like Ty Simpson, maybe in like that early second round. Maybe they might have to move up a little bit into the back half of the first to get him. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work with this team, and this is definitely, I think the Cardinals should probably be one of those teams. Look, I don't want to say tank the season and get your quarterback as part of that stacked 2027 class, but I would not be surprised if they're one of those teams when we look at towards 2027, they have one of those top picks, and that's where they'll bring in their future franchise quarterback.
This is going to be a long rebuild for this football team. Like there's no way around it. And they have some decent young pieces. Paris Johnson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. They have some decent pieces. They just need to go out and add more. Draft well, and you're gonna have to be patient if you're a Cardinal fan. This isn't gonna be fixed overnight. And with the Murray money that they're gonna have to take on for a little bit, I think 2 years they're gonna have to take it on. it's not going to happen overnight. You know, you look at this team, you know, you like I really like Walter Nolan. I think there's something there. Zaven Collins has been all right. Will Johnson's good. There are some pieces, and they have drafted pretty well. So now it's just a matter of acquiring talent, and they might be a team that takes some risks in free agency, but not the risks you think of, right? Like former first round picks, guys who maybe you can get on cheaper deals, 1-2 year deals to have a chance to prove themselves in Arizona, and then see if you can start to build it from there and in the draft.
All right. That was the Cardinals. We are on our final two teams.
Long journey.
Long journey. In my opinion, two teams that are going very much in the opposite direction of one another. We'll see if we land on the team I'm picking on. We did. Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me get my Steeler notes. I got to go from A to P here. It's quite a journey here. Let's see. Pittsburgh Steelers, of course, new head coach. They go from one Mike Tomlin to another Mike and Mike McCarthy. All right. So, Pittsburgh Steelers. So, the Steelers this season go 10-7, and they win the AFC North for the first time since 2020. You might recall, right, the last game of the season, Ravens fans, put your fingers in your ears. They beat the Ravens 26-24 on the Tyler Lupmus field goal. Mike Tomlin reached 200 career wins as a Steelers coach after their Week 16 win against the Lions. However, of course, we know the Steelers' season ended with a 30-6 loss on Wild Card Weekend to the Houston Texans. And it's been the same manner for the Steelers since 2017, as it's been almost a decade now since they've last won a playoff game. Did you hear that, Steeler fans? It's been almost a decade since you won a playoff game. I'm not forgetting 2010, the AFC title game. That still pisses me off to this day. Anyway, after the loss, Tomlin announced that he was stepping down as head coach after 19 seasons, and this actually ends his tenure tied with Chuck Noll for the most wins in Steelers history. Can you believe that? That's pretty crazy. So the Steelers offense was middle of the pack this season. They ranked 15th in points per game at 23.4, but they were 25th in total yards per game. So passing yards per game, they were ranked about 22nd, and rushing yards per game, they were 26th. Now, what really helped the offense this year, and there's some luck involved here, they only lost 15 turnovers on the season, which was fourth best in the league. So they did a very good job taking care of the football. So, right, they bring in 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who he played okay. He threw for 26 touchdowns during the season, only 7 interceptions. Like I said, they didn't turn the ball over a lot. DK Metcalf led the team with 850 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Jalen Warren ran for 958 yards. The team finished 18th in the red zone touchdown percentage at 56%. So let's talk about the Steelers defense, because they had a really, really solid season. And mainly this defense was made up of veteran players on expensive contracts. They were pretty much like a high-risk reward team, as they had a lot of splash plays during the year, a lot of defensive touchdowns, which really helped out the offense. But as many defensive touchdowns that they had, they got absolutely shredded in the passing game a lot. So they actually finished fourth in takeaways and sixth in sacks. In points allowed per game, they were 17th. Yards allowed per game, they were 25th in pass defense. In pass defensive yards, they were 29th. Cam Hayward continued to play really well at the age of 36. He earned second team All-Pro honors. He finished as PFF's #1 ranked run defender. Joey Porter Jr. did not allow a single touchdown in man coverage the entire season. He led the team with 14 passes defended. Jalen Ramsey, even, people like to rip on Jalen Ramsey. He still had a solid season too. He was tasked this season to play a lot more of like hybrid role. He was kind of like playing between corner and safety. He led all Steelers defensive backs in tackles. And of course, right, TJ Watt, he had 7 sacks this season. So right, you might think it was a little lower than he typically did. The Steelers entered the offseason was they'd have about like $50 million or so in cap space, right? Mike Tomlin gone, he's out. Former Packers and Cowboys coach, your boy Mike McCarthy, takes over, and right, there's a big question mark now what they're going to do at quarterback. Does McCarthy want to run it back with Aaron Rodgers, right? Rodgers came in only playing on a 1-year deal this past season. He's technically a free agent. And of course, we're unsure if he's going to retire. So the Steelers might want to look into a new quarterback. Me personally, as a Jet fan, I went through the whole Darkness Retreat and all the McAfee shows. I don't even want to get into that. So Steeler fans, you know what you're getting into with Aaron Rodgers. So let's talk about some of their other free agents, though. So Kenneth Gainwell, he was voted their team MVP. He's a pretty solid player. He had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage last season in running and receiving. I mentioned this guy a couple of times, Isaac Sumalo. He's a veteran player on the line. He is getting up there in age, dealt with some injuries. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Steelers move on. I'm thinking McCarthy. I'm thinking the Packers. Calvin Austin's another guy. He was really the Steelers' deep threat last season. He scored a game-winning touchdown in the game against the Ravens. The Steelers' entire receiving room really needs a makeover, as the only primary ones that are under contract currently are DK Metcalf and Roman Wilson from Michigan a couple years ago. Their secondary also is a lot of free agents in the secondary. Miles Killebrew, Chuck Clark, Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, they're all free agents. So the secondary could look a whole lot different next season. We don't know who's going to be playing right now next to Joey Porter Jr. or potentially Jalen Ramsey. There could be some cap casualties here. I think it was yesterday I saw Jonnu Smith got cut. So that's going to save the Steelers about $7 million. Patrick Queen, the linebacker, he's owed $17 million this upcoming season. He had like kind of an inconsistent season. Also, Malik Harrison is owed roughly about $5 million. So he could be cut as well. All right, so let's get into the coaching, right? So Mike McCarthy coming over, right? He took a year off, maybe he didn't take a year off. Maybe nobody wanted to hire him. Out of the Cowboys from 2 years ago, he's going to act as the play caller as he did at his previous head coaching stop. So, right, he's a strong believer in the traditional West Coast offense, systems based on quarterbacks' rhythm and timing, emphasizing quick passing, high percentage throws. So he prefers a quarterback who can extend plays, right? Like Aaron Rodgers used to be, had your boy Dak in Dallas. However, right, Rodgers coming back this season, he doesn't really fit that anymore. It doesn't really make sense. Rodgers can't move anymore. I think McCarthy will want to bring in a quarterback who is more mobile. So, right, so something like RPOs could be incorporated. He wants his receivers to be able to play all three positions on the field, right? The X, the Z, and the slot, right? And this is a preferred zone blocking run scheme. Now, the defensive coordinator that's coming in with McCarthy is Patrick Graham, right? So he's coming over to be the Steelers DC after serving in that same role with the Raiders last season. So McCarthy had mentioned that the Steelers will maintain a 3-4 base, though Graham's teams have historically shown like a lot of 4-man fronts, as he prefers to try to keep his linebackers, quote unquote, clean, right? To make plays on the field away from the line of scrimmage. So his defenses typically feature like light boxes. So, fewer than 7 players at the line of scrimmage, right? He wants to rely more on basically the defensive linemen winning their individual matchups against opposing teams' offensive linemen. Graham's coverages are often a lot of cover 3, which was his most used coverage last year with the Raiders. This allows corners to play more aggressively with safety help over the top, right? So he also uses cover 1, putting his corners on islands. So like a guy like Joey Porter Jr., right? He could be pulled off. He could be on an island sometimes because how well he was in man coverage this past season. A lot of simulated pressures, as I spoke about a lot tonight and previous weeks, right? Often showing 6 to 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, but only 4 rush while the others drop back into coverage. So let's talk about free agent fits here with this team now. So one of the receivers I'm looking at here for the Steelers, because again, they really need receivers. I like a guy like Jawan Jennings here. He's known for coming up big as a big 3rd down conversion guy. He's really a good blocker for a wide receiver too. Very physical player. I could see the Steelers looking into the trade market too for a wide receiver. They really need to bring in at least 2, maybe even 3 receivers here. So maybe you sign one, maybe you draft one. There's rumors regarding like the status of Michael Pittman with the Colts. Like I said, I think he actually could be a pretty good fit here if the Colts decide to release him. One of your boys, Donovan Wilson, the safety from Dallas, maybe McCarthy, he knows him. He might want to bring him over to play in the secondary. As I said, the Steelers secondary, they have a ton of guys that are up for free agents. Another guy might be a fit here like Rasul Douglas. Rasul Douglas fits Patrick Graham's scheme. He could probably be a pretty good player as the number 2 opposite of Joey Porter Jr. He's coming off a pretty good season in Miami. And then here's another prediction for the night, Tom. All right. Aaron Rodgers will not be the quarterback of the Steelers next year. The Steelers will sign Malik Willis. This is my prediction where Willis ends up. I think McCarthy will like his mobility, right? Like, as I mentioned, a lot of RPOs that could be run here. I don't think Rodgers is going to be back with the Steelers. I don't think him or McCarthy care to work with each other again. That's my take on the Steelers.
I think that's fair. If I had to pick a spot for where I think Malik Willis will end up, I'd probably pick the Steelers as well. It's funny. I almost said the Packers too. We keep talking about McCarthy and Rodgers, and it feels like 10 years ago. But yeah, I think Malik Willis would be a good fit here, and they have a little bit of money that they can play with, and probably sign him to a good contract, and that Willis would be happy with, and the Packers would be happy with, and not have to commit too long term to him. So yeah, I could see Willis signing here. Quarterback's the most important position on this team, right? Or with this team right now and where they're at and what they're looking to do. They need to figure it out. And they just don't pick in a spot in the draft where we're thinking they're going to be able to get them. I mean, unless you like Ty Simpson that much and you're going to take him there, it feels like this is a team that should take a chance on Malik Willis and then go from there. I think this team needs help in the secondary. I know they have Joey Porter and Brandon Eccles. I guess that corner it'll really come down to what they do with Jalen Ramsey. But they might move him to safety. So if they move him to safety, then they're going to need another corner. If they don't move him to safety, then they're going to need to bring in a safety. I think they'll probably need to bring in 2. So safety is a position as well. And then you mentioned it, like, for as good as DK Metcalf played, I'm still not a massive fan of his. And maybe a better quarterback. He looks a little bit better. This team needs another wide receiver, maybe 2. So that's another need as well. And then defensive tackle, I think. You mentioned it, Cameron Hayward is 37. He's still playing at an incredibly high level, but can we get a guy in there to fit with him and what we're looking to do and eventually replace Cam Hayward as well? So, defensive tackle is an area, I think, as well.
Yeah, a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of older guys, especially on that defense. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, of course, right, the big question is going to be, again, like it always is for any team that's not settled at the position. What is this team going to do at quarterback? I really, like I said, I don't see Rodgers and McCarthy working together again. I just don't. I don't think it makes any sense. I get Rodgers. I mean, I don't know how desperate he is, really, to play again. So maybe if it gets to desperation time, maybe Malik Willis chooses not to go to the Steelers. Maybe he signs with a team like the Dolphins because he knows the coaching staff and the front office there now. Maybe that happens. Maybe at the end of the day, maybe Rodgers signs with the Steelers as part of sometime in I don't know, during the summer. But I just don't see him being at least the number 1 option for that team.
I've said this the last couple of years, but I don't think he plays this year. I mean, he was okay last year. He did well. But at some point he's just going to decide that, it's time. And I don't know if this is another year. And I outside of the Steelers, what do you think his options are? I don't think he has many options. And if the Steelers aren't an option, I mean, he'll drag it out on the McAfee show and all that stuff, but I don't know what his options are. And I could see him and McCarthy wanting to run it back. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting scenario for Rodgers. And it does feel like the Steelers have some options outside of him.
I'll tell you what, if they run it back together, you might as well bring back Clay Matthews and Jordy Nelson.
Don't give Rodgers any idea.
Dude, all these guys.
We know he'll get all his guys there. We know how Rodgers likes to operate.
We saw with the Jets, he brought in all these guys, bringing back Randall Cobb and Nathaniel Hackett. Jeez, man. I don't want to go down that road again. All right. So we reached our last team in our free agency preview, the Chicago Bears. And you know what? Just for the hell with it, I'm spinning the
are you going to spin it? Are you going to spin the wheel?
It's spinning, brother. It's spinning. We spinning it. Let the Bears light up. Let's see their confetti. Give the Bears fans what they want to see. There you go. So the Bears were the last team, the solo survivors of the wheel.
I was going to say, it kind of feels fitting that it's the Bears, right? Like they kind of feel like the talk of the town right now. That's always a dangerous spot to be. for a football team, especially when are they going to be more Washington Commanders, or are they going to be more of like, we're going to be consistent contender? We'll see. But it was a dream season for Chicago, who saw their young quarterback take meaningful steps and lead the Bears not just to a playoff appearance, but an unbelievable comeback win against a hated rival, and nearly equaled it with an almost unbelievable comeback against the Rams in the divisional round. But the Bears have some important players from a year ago up, and will have to be creative without a ton of cap space. So just quickly, they've promoted Declan Doyle from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator. So that's one major staff change for the Bears. They are under the cap. They have created some more money, or created some more space, and they are continuing to work on ways to do it. So extension candidates, one is DeAndre Swift, finally found his home in Chicago. Swift had his most productive season as a running back, 1,300 all-purpose yards, 10 touchdowns. Swift may be in line for an extension to keep him in Chicago as he hits his final year of his contract. And then there's Montez Sweat, who's one of the Bears' best defensive linemen, led the team in forced fumbles and sacks. While an extension isn't needed, extending him will definitely help create some space if they look to do it. So under the restructure candidates, DJ Moore was one of them. He's been traded, and I will get into that in a minute. They also have Joe Thuney, who they can convert his salary, and Grady Jarrett. They can convert their salaries. If they combine both, they'll free up just over $14 million. So what to do with players? One was Tremaine Edmonds. They have released him, or they will release him. He was owed a good amount of money, I think $15 million. They release him and free up some money there. Cole Kmet's another player whose production has dipped since adding Colson Loveland. If they cut him before March 15th, they can avoid paying his $1 million roster bonus and free up $8.4 million. And they've traded DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills. Finn touched on that a bit, for a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick, and they freed up about $16.5 million there. So I think the Bears are sitting around $26 million right now, and they continue to make moves and get creative ways to improve their roster. And I'll touch on that in a minute, because there's kind of some breaking news with them. But first, we'll touch on their free agents. So their first free agent, Nashawn Wright, he was drafted by the Cowboys. Wright signed with, or either signed or was traded to Chicago, and had a really solid season for the Bears. He had 5 INTs, including one for a touchdown, 117 tackles, 16 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, which is interesting. His spot track has him valued at $16 million. He was really good for the Bears, but I think this is a guy who moves on at that price, especially because when we talk about the 2 safeties, I think they'd rather keep those guys than retain Wright. Next, we have 2 safeties. First is Jaquan Brister. His spot track has him valued at $10 million. While some might have thought he had a down year, for Brisker, he's still an incredibly productive player and continues to play well in the box for Chicago. They also have Kevin Bird, whose spot track has valued at $7.8 million. Bird also had a solid season for the Bears. He led the team in INTs and had 93 tackles. He's an impact player for the Bears, and he's one that I think they'd like to keep. I doubt they can. Well, they can keep both, but I think if they're looking to sign one versus the other, I think Bird would be the one that they look to keep. Braxton Jones, an offensive tackle, is a free agent, inconsistent with his play, and he's been injured a lot since joining the Bears. I think they'll let him walk. And Andrew Billings has had a really solid year, 2 years for the Bears. Was injured a bit this season, didn't contribute a lot, so keep an eye on him. The need for the Bears: edge, defensive tackle, cornerback, and center. Cornerback, Jalen Johnson was hurt in 2025. Gardner Johnson and Nashawn Wright are free agents. If they both leave, it's Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, and Kyler Gordon as their corners. They need to add a corner. I think even if they keep Gardner Johnson or Wright, I think they could do well to add one. Safety could become a need for this football team if they lose both Brisker and Bird, but I don't think they'll lose both edge. When you look at this team off of the edge, Montez Sweat is really good. He needs some help. It can't just be Montez Sweat for this team rushing the quarterback. They got some decent play in the playoffs from Austin Booker, so maybe they look to kind of extend his role a little bit more. But Sweat had 10 sacks. Garvin Dexter Sr., a defensive tackle, had 6. And then it was Booker with 4.5, and he really got hot in the postseason. And then it's C.J. Gardner-Johnson. This is not a team that had a ton of sacks. They need to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. So I have edge and defensive tackle as kind of 2 spots where this team could improve. Center was a need. Drew Daltman unexpectedly retired at 27 years old, but the Bears, literally, as we were on the podcast, just traded for Garrett Bradbury, who played for the Pats last year. Kind of feels like a low-risk, high-reward move. Bradbury was really good as a pass blocker, not really good as a run blocker. So maybe that gives you a little insight on what the Bears will look to do next year. But this is a team that when you look at their roster, you like a lot of what they had. They had a solid offensive line. If Bradbury can come in and play well, their line's okay. Wide receiver maybe becomes a need now for this football team. Trading DJ Moore, but they drafted Luther Burden III, who they like. They have Roma Dunze, and Colson Loveland was a very reliable target. They have DeAndre Swift. They have Kyle, I'm going to butcher his name. Finn, help me with it. How do I pronounce his name? The Rutgers kid.
You'd have to...
Manganaya?
I'm not even going to attempt it. I know who you're
Yeah,
talking
listen,
about, though.
I can't do the pronunciations,
Mhm.
but they have him, so they're comfortable with their offense. I think it's just a matter of making this defense better, both rushing the quarterback and then, depending on what they lose, replacing some of those guys in the back end.
Yeah, hey, folks, right? Breaking news, right? You get breaking news here on the Loft Sports Podcast, man. Let me tell you, Garrett Bradbury, right, as Tom mentioned, over to the Bears. Actually, I'm on X right now. A lot of Patriots people are saying this will probably mean Jared Wilson could kick inside to play center, which I guess is his more natural position instead of playing left guard. So again, that opens up a hole there, dude. Like we spoke earlier about I'm sorry, getting off topic with the Patriots, but we spoke a little earlier about kicking in Campbell possibly to play left guard. Maybe they move everybody down one spot to the right and they do look for a new left tackle next season. But as far as the Bears go, yeah, kind of echo what you're saying. It's funny with the Bears, like we always look at the Bears as like in the past, right? It's like, oh, the monsters of the Midway, the Bears defense and all that. They've gone opposite now. They have a really good offense and their defense is basically pedestrian, right? So they ranked 29th. They were 29th ranked defense last year. They need to pour more resources especially into that defensive line, right, coming via free agency, they need to sign guys. Pick number 25, I would think, is probably going to be used for defense. And like you said, Montez Sweat, real good player, but they need to take some pressure off him. They need some help on that D-line. The secondary, right, Byard, he's 32 years old. He's coming off an all-pro season, and Jaquan Brisker is a free agent, but Brisker does have a history of injuries, so it could potentially make him a candidate to walk. Originally, I thought actually this could have been a really good spot for Cam Curl, who actually the Rams just literally re-signed today. So I think what's going to end up happening here is I think Brisker will return for the Bears. But if he doesn't, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Could they look into like a Nick Cross or a Brian Cook? One of them on the back end of this defense would be really good. As you mentioned, Tremaine Edmonds, he just got released. One free agent out there. He's kind of on the older side, but Demario Davis, he's an elite run defender. He brings some good veteran leadership to that defense. And right, I mean, of course, right, the Max Crosby spot. This is a very popular name that's being floated around. I think actually I think Schefter said earlier today that him personally, he'd be surprised if he ended up with the Bears.
Yeah, it
Crosby.
sounds like the Bears are probably out for Crosby.
That's what it seems like, right? But I mean, they did pick up a second round pick though in that trade. Maybe the Bears try to make that work somehow. Yeah, but the Bears, I mean, definitely a team that's really interested to see, like you kind of mentioned earlier in your opener, do they take the next step and solidify themselves as one of those powerhouse teams in the NFC? Or do they go the route of like the Washington Commanders? You have a really good season, but the next season, all of a sudden you fall off. We saw, right, how bad the Commanders defense was last season. Bears defense, it could be just as bad, honestly, with how the current talent and roster on the defensive side looks right there. So we'll see what happens. And again, very similar too, right? Caleb Williams, can he follow up as good a year as he had, similar to how great Jaden Daniels was his first season. So the Bears are going to be one of the interesting teams to follow going into next season. I still like them ahead of the Packers right now. And they probably are ahead of the Lions right now with how the Lions offensive line's looking
And
coming
I
into
do
this
wanna
year.
mention that there's been talk about left tackle for the Bears as well. Taylor Decker shockingly got his release from the Lions today, so something happened there. There's a lot of smoke in that he might end up in Chicago with former offense coordinator Ben Johnson. So keep an eye on that for their line as well, and, a line that was good, but they're revamping a little bit. Keep an eye on Decker to the Bears.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all if something like that happened. I'm sure there's a relationship there from Ben Johnson's days in Detroit. It would not surprise me at all. Well, all right, folks. Well, we went through all 32 teams. You now have everything you need to be prepared for free agency when it starts technically on Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, when agents and teams can begin talking.
Legal tampering period.
Legal tampering. Yeah, that's the biggest
It sounds
oxymoron.
as ridiculous as it is.
It is. Absolutely. I don't know why they just don't say, like, let free agency. I don't get why they do that. But yeah, so we went through all 32 teams. Everyone's fully prepared for the new league year. So we appreciate everyone following us on this 32 team journey here. So thanks for hanging in the loft with us. The official Loft Sport.
Finn, I have some breaking news.
Whoa, really? Okay.
The Rangers have traded Brennan Offman to Calgary.
Wait, when did this just happen? Because the
It
trade deadline passed like 3 hours ago.
It happened like right as we started recording, but I was like, oh, let me just drop that massive bombshell for the Rangers.
So hold on. So wait. So they traded the guy. They traded Offman instead of the center who they should have traded.
I'm
saying.
okay. I'm okay with them not trading Trocheck. And
After Shin was traded for like a first, a third, Jonathan Drouin, and a prospect.
They weren't getting that. They weren't going to get that.
You're telling me Trocheck's not a better player than Shin?
If they got that offer, I think they would have took it.
Oh, I think they would have, but
Minnesota didn't offer it to them.
I'm not going to get into hockey right now. So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us. Oh, man, Chris Drury. Oh, boy. The official Loft Sports podcast can be found wherever you consume your podcast. Check out our website, loftsportus.com. We continue to add scouting reports for the draft. Tom continues to churn these out. I've been adding a new baseball preview every day. Speaking of trades in the NHL, I'm planning to add an NHL trade deadline piece just to kind of give some grades on some of the big trades that happened over the past week as
Rangers
we got the deadline day today.
Right? Rangers and F?
Sam Carrick technically got traded today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and I think they got back like a third round pick with that. So maybe they get like a C+. I don't know.
Dude plays his ass off. One of the few.
Yeah. So right, folks. So please check out our articles, rate and review our articles. Please let us know how we're doing. Feedback is very important to us. And we need to know if we're doing something right or if we're doing something wrong or how we could be better. So please, feedback, very important. Follow us on X, YouTube, TikTok. We now have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram. Follow us on all 5 social platforms. We are under Loft Sports USA. Please rate and review our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. We will talk to you soon.